Chapter 434. Huarini, who thought he had escaped from danger, was in a bad mood. Although Blackwater didn't blame him at all, he felt very guilty in his heart. In that case, Blackwater had a chance to escape. However, in order to escape, he let Blackwater delay a little longer. As a result, he died in his own firewall. Huarini blamed himself deeply. But for brothers like them, apologies must be expressed with actions. Verbal apologies would only make others feel that they were pretentious. This guy is too despicable. Huarini shouted to his brothers while running in the fog. Why is he here? Is he chasing after us? Jian Nanyu couldn't figure it out. That's impossible. No one followed us along the way. How did they know we came to Xiaoyu City? Glue was also puzzled. Is there a traitor? Jian Nanyu was used to walking on the edge of a knife. He was used to being cautious and thinking from the worst possible angle. Now that he couldn't explain why their whereabouts were exposed, this thought almost involuntarily drilled into his mind. But Jian Nanyu quickly shook his head to deny it. The seven of them had known each other for a long time. If one of them was disloyal, they wouldn't have lasted until today. Moreover, the restraints that Jian Nanyu's group had with their clients also existed among the seven of them. People might betray others, but at least they wouldn't betray themselves. The seven of them were already in a relationship of honor and disgrace, so it was impossible to say that there was a traitor. I'm absolutely sure that no one followed us along the way. Glue strongly expressed his position, dispelling everyone's doubts on this issue. If that's the case, there's only one possibility. Jian Nanyu said. What? Among the people we met in Xiaoyu City, someone happened to recognize us, and at the same time, he was a friend of those guys. Jian Nanyu said. It's not surprising that they had friends, but isn't it a bit exaggerated that they would recognize us? Even in Linshui City, there aren't many people who know us. How could someone know us here? Glue said. Jian Nanyu pondered for a moment, then asked Huarini, Rini, did you get rid of him? Yes. The fire wall stopped him. It's very easy to get rid of the fog here. Huarini said confidently. His confidence wasn't wrong, but it was a pity that something beyond their understanding had appeared this time, a wanted license. In the scene with Child Elite Group, Wandering Jiannan and the others repeatedly stumbled into things they didn't know about. Each of them was bleeding profusely, but they still didn't know why. Don't panic, everyone. Jian Nan said, this city is very good for hiding. We can only recognize each other when we are 30 meters apart. We can't even see a figure 40 meters away. It won't be easy for him to find us. Everyone nodded in agreement. But I really can't take this lying down. Let's find a way to kill this guy. Huarini said indignantly. There will be a chance. Jian Nan comforted Huarini, this guy is so arrogant. Sooner or later, we will receive a mission to kill him. At that time, we can kill two birds with one stone, and then we can set him up. Huarini sighed. He had to admit that Jian Nanyu was indeed the leader of the seven of them. He was the most composed one among the seven of them. Blackwater, how about you? Are there any abnormalities? Jian Nan asked. I didn't find anything. The experienced Blackwater didn't rush out after reviving in the Thieves' Guild. He calmly sneaked out of the guild's courtyard and observed from a corner. He didn't find anyone suspicious. Unless the other party was a thief in stealth like him, there was no one lying in ambush. Don't leave in a hurry. Let's observe for a bit longer, Jian Nan said. Understood. Blackwater nodded. They couldn't detect a thief's stealth, which was one of their biggest regrets at the moment. Rumor had it that this video mage had anti-stealth equipment. This guy was really full of treasures. However, the seven of them couldn't avoid this guy in time. They really didn't want to steal his equipment. Besides that, they also heard that one of the top 5 roaches, Water Depth, also knew anti-stealth. However, it was said that he had a skill that couldn't be dropped, so the 7 of them didn't want to steal his equipment. What do we do now? Glue asked. Pretend he doesn't exist. Continue doing what you were doing, Jian Nan said. Did you hear back from Honey Peach? Not yet, Glue said. There was still no reply from Jian Nan. Just as he was about to say something, Dao Xiangmu suddenly shouted, there's a reply. Soft hands? Yup. Dao Xiangmu opened the mail and quickly scanned through it. The message they sent had already stated their intentions. The other party had opened the friend button and invited them to talk in detail. This time, the negotiation would be carried out by Jian Nan. This was also a small show that the 7 of them had purposely arranged. After all, Jian Nan's name was well known in the game. His sudden appearance would give the other party a sense of surprise. For some reason, the other party's trust in him would increase. Some might even feel flattered. The person called Soft Hands was such a person. After Jian Nan added him as a friend, he quickly added Jian Nan as a friend. Before Jian Nan you could tell him that he was the person who had just contacted him, this guy had already sent him a greeting message. Jian Nan Yu smiled faintly. He had experienced this kind of situation more than once or twice. He no longer felt anything about other people's admiration for him. He only knew that facing such a person, their business would be more successful. Sure enough, after Jian Nan Yu explained his intentions, his hands went soft, and he was overwhelmed by the favor. He was one of the top 5 experts, yet he had actually accepted a mission from a nobody like him. Speaking of which, this mission had just been posted. As expected of an expert, his eyes were as bright as a torch. He immediately picked up on this mission. Soft Hands didn't forget to fantasize about his own aura. In the end, he finally asked a serious question, aren't you from Linshui City? Why are you here at Xiaowu City? Hee, nothing much. I was bored, so I came out for a stroll. Jian Nan easily dodged the question. Under the halo of an expert, the other party almost worshipped his words as if they were gods. Jian Nan Yu couldn't help but think, if the other party knew that he was hunted down in Linshui City and fled to Xiaoyu City, what would he think? After that, the discussion naturally went smoothly. As for why they didn't accept the mission directly from the mercenary building, Jian Nan bluntly said that he wasn't a mercenary group and couldn't accept it. It was acceptable to say that he didn't want the system to earn the service fee. However, it would make people feel that he was stingy, which wasn't good for his image. Then, both parties agreed to meet at the North Gate. Soft Hands was looking for someone to help him complete a mission. He didn't specify the name of the mission in the mercenary building. He just wrote it as an ordinary mission with a high price tag. This was the main reason why Jian Nan and the others were interested. Moreover, they were willing to pay so much for an ordinary mission. It would be a waste if they didn't develop such a sucker as a customer. North Gate, everyone gather. Blackwater, come over too. Jian Nan sent a message to everyone. This was also their habit. They would try their best to show off their strength to the customers they met for the first time and leave a deep impression on them. Jian Nan and the others started to gather. However, they didn't know that the child elite group was also moving towards the fire-blazing coat after the coordinates of Gu Fei's wanted mission were refreshed. Brother Yu also returned to the game. He said dejectedly that he didn't get any information. After learning the situation, he immediately asked to see Gu Fei's wanted license. Move forward with the fire-blazing coat as the center. We'll meet sooner or later. Gu Fei sent the coordinates of the fire-blazing coat to Brother Yu. The two groups moved in the fog of Xia Fog City. Jian Nan and the others were the first to gather. They finally saw the person who might become their future god of fortune's hands go soft. This guy was also a warrior. When he saw the legendary expert, Jian Nan, his eyes turned into stars. Jian Nan was easygoing and generous. He patted his soft shoulders and said, "Tell me the details of your mission as we walk." In the end, Soft Hands smiled mysteriously. Actually, it's not a mission. It's a boss. I found it by accident, but I don't have the strength to fight it. Oh. Jian Nan replied calmly. He wasn't like the other players who would have their eyes light up when they heard about a boss. The other 6 were also calm. Soft Hands observed the expressions of the 7 people. He blindly worshipped and trusted the top experts. It was as if a high level meant a good character. This seemed to have something in common with the students in school who had good grades as well as good character. At this moment, when the 7 of them heard about the boss, their calm expressions dispelled his last bit of doubt. He felt that Jian Nan's team definitely wasn't the kind of people who would have evil thoughts at the sight of money. In fact, the 7 of them had long since cultivated to the point where they were above the common people. Evil thoughts at the sight of money? They hadn't even seen the money yet. What were they thinking about? That was too lowly. After the boss died, they would see what it dropped. Only then would the 7 reveal their true colors. If they really needed something, such as anti-stealth equipment or skills, they wouldn't hesitate to have evil thoughts at the sight of money. At this moment, Soft Hands wasn't even Jian Nan's client. They wouldn't trust this person for now. Poor Soft Hands didn't know that he had entered a tiger's den. He obediently led the 7 of them on their journey to kill the boss. At the same time, Gu Fei and the others were also gathering in this direction. Due to the difference in movement speed, the distance between each other was quite large. Han family young master noticed the latest changes in the coordinates of the flaming cloak and suddenly said, they might have already met up. The flaming cloak's movement speed has slowed down. Only when the team was moving would they intentionally slow down in order to accommodate their slow movement speed. Also, there's a lot of movement speed this time. Brother Yu calculated and said, with this movement speed, I think it's a warrior or cleric below level 35. Why are they fooling around with a noob? The experts in the elite group were also confused. Chapter 435. The fog outside of Xia Fog City seemed to be thicker than the inside of the city. Visibility was further reduced. A conservative estimate was that you could see people within 25 meters. Beyond that, you could see a human figure. Beyond that, there was fog that was so thick that it wouldn't disperse. The weather conditions in Xia Wu City made it very likely that one's hands would go soft. This was because you would only be able to confirm that it was a boss within 25 meters. If you were unlucky and brushed past the boss outside 25 meters, you would think that it was a normal trash. Because of this, the boss location wasn't hidden. It was just that because of the thick fog, other players didn't go within 25 meters of it. Hands memorized the coordinates. At this moment, while leading the way, he didn't hold back as he introduced the boss to Azure Blade and the others. Misty Assassin Andrew Su. From the name alone, it was an assassin that changed from a thief to a thief. Hands went soft online to search for information on the boss. The official information he received was that it was trapped here by the fog of Xia Fog City. It was a boss unique to Xia Fog City. Its strength, level, skills, and other official information were all unknown. Although Hands had come into contact with it and fought it, the information he had was also unknown. It went around to my back and stabbed me, and I was killed, he said, his hands weak and ashamed. This was a common problem for noobs. When they encountered a boss, they would be so excited that they didn't know what was going on. They would boldly try to fight it alone. Azure Blade listened on the side and nodded silently. In the end, he said, to be able to attack you from behind before you could react, this boss movement speed must be very fast. Yes, yes. Hands nodded excitedly. He was full of admiration for Azure Blade. You're a warrior. Killing you with one stab means that the damage isn't low. However, it's very likely that it's a backstab skill. After thieves advance into the assassin class, the backstab damage will increase and there's a chance that it will ignore defense. Although it's an NPC, it still has to follow the class settings. However, the skill that the system gave it should be very proficient. If it's a backstab, then the damage from the front might not be that scary. Azure Blade continued to analyze. Hands continued to be in awe. As for the other point in his mind, he didn't say it out loud. An assassin has a higher chance of dropping equipment or skills. Could it be that the heavens are helping us and preparing to give us an anti-stealth skill? His hands turned soft, and he grew more and more confident in Jian Nanyu and the others. These 7 people had ulterior motives, but they did not show it and continued forward. However, because their hands were weak, they slowed down their speed. The people from Child Elite Group had gradually caught up. For example, Gu Fei and Sword Demon, the 2 faster ones, had already met up. Moreover, they knew that Jian Nan and the others were not far in front of them. If they quickened their pace, they might be able to see them. Although Imperial Sky Divine Cry was fast, unfortunately, he did not dare to run alone. At this time, he could only follow behind Zhang Wushang slowly. He had a stomach full of resentment with nowhere to vent it. As for Han family young master, he came out of the tavern and was the closest to the north gate. Although he moved slowly, he wasn't too far behind. Brother Yu rushed over from the revival point after coming online. He caught up to Han family young master and the 2 of them walked together. Let's go. Gu Fei, who was the closest to the 7 people, was eager to go up and cut the melons and vegetables. Fuck, no. If you go up now, we'll have run so far for nothing. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle strongly objected. It wasn't because they were worried that Gu Fei wasn't strong enough, but because they were too confident in his strength. They thought that if he attacked, the 7 people would be wiped out. Then, wouldn't their running for so long be a waste? Their way of thinking was quite reverse. They weren't worried about their family's safety, but they weren't worried at all. Gu Fei said helplessly, then hurry up. Fuck, if it wasn't for that good-for-nothing Wushang being so slow, I would have been here a long time ago. Yutian Shinming was angry. If you say any more nonsense, I'll throw you out. Unscathed in Battle was also angry. Yutian Shinming didn't dare say anything. If Unscathed in Battle really threw him into the fog, he would become a lost marksman. Don't be in a hurry to make a move. Let's see what these guys are up to. Han family young master spoke at this time. It wasn't Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle's messy reasons. Who's with them? Brother Yu was confident in his calculations. The 7 people were definitely with the 8th person. If we get any closer, we'll be exposed. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon agreed because the 2 of them had heard the voices in front of them. Jian Nan's group of 7 kept a low profile, but Soft Hands wasn't like that. He talked and laughed loudly. Gu Fei didn't even need to use the coordinates of the flaming shirt. He just needed to listen to his voice and he wouldn't be wrong. This reminded Gu Fei and Sword Demon not to speak rashly. At this time, they were so close that they would be heard by the other party. Although the 2 of them walked side by side, they communicated through messages. Finally, a few blurry figures appeared in front of them. It was Jian Nan and the others who stopped. Gu Fei and Sword Demon immediately stopped moving forward. They even took a few steps back and hid themselves in the thick fog. Then, they heard the voice in front of them say, "They should be around here. Everyone be careful." The 2 of them heard Jian Nan's voice again. The 7 of them didn't split up. They formed a circle with their backs facing each other and surrounded Soft Hands. On one hand, they didn't give Misty Assassin Andrew Su a chance to sneak attack from behind. On the other hand, Soft Hands, who was being protected, felt comfortable from head to toe. They're looking for something. It might be a boss. At this moment, Sword Ghost sent a message. In the end, he was a veteran in the game. His judgment was still faster than Gu Fei's. Boss! Everyone cried out. It was obvious that they weren't a professional group. They didn't have the calmness that Jian Nan and the others pretended to have when they heard about a boss. Can you fucking move faster? Yutian Shinming berated Unscathed in Battle. Fucking shitty warrior. What kind of shitty speed is this? Unscathed in Battle even looked down on his favorite class for the boss. Be careful. Don't let them suddenly rush over and discover us. Gu Fei messaged Sword Demon. I know. Sword Demon replied. When Gu Fei looked back, Sword Demon was already gone. Fuck. Gu Fei couldn't help but curse in his heart. Sword Demon was already in stealth. He was a bit more difficult to deal with. They couldn't see each other in the fog. Gu Fei also couldn't feel any killing intent. The coordinates of the flaming cloak refreshed every minute. It wasn't enough for such a delicate moment. Say something, say something. Don't you talk a lot. Gu Fei kept muttering in his heart. He was wondering why Soft Hands suddenly became quiet. Soft Hands would naturally become quiet. In such a tense moment, he didn't dare to talk nonsense to distract others. He was surrounded in the center of the circle and didn't even dare to make a sound. He looked around nervously. Gu Fei was helpless. Suddenly, Sword Demon messaged him, "Move towards XXX, XXX." Gu Fei came to his senses. After Sword Demon went into stealth, he boldly walked out of the fog to directly observe the actions of those guys. At this time, he naturally saw their actions and then gave him instructions. Gu Fei moved according to Sword Demon's instructions. He was a little impatient. He actually didn't have any love for the boss. At this time, he directly rushed out and killed the 7 people. That would be great. However, sometimes he had to take care of other people's feelings. Gu Fei knew that for these online game addicts, killing a boss was more important than killing an enemy because the probability of a boss dropping good things was much higher than a player's. They must be looking for a boss. Seeing these guys' actions with his own eyes, Sword Demon had already come to this conclusion. This made Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in battle even more anxious. Yutian Shinming wanted to whip Unscathed in battle faster, like whipping a horse. Han family young master and brother Yu were much calmer. They continued to rush forward at a moderate pace. Brother Yu flipped through the records of the boss situation in Xia Fog City and realized that there was pitifully little information about this main city. This was all because of the fog. Sword Demon paid attention to the 7 people's actions and also looked around nervously. He also wanted to know where the boss was. Over there. Sword Demon suddenly saw a black shadow flash past from the corner of his eye. He suddenly turned his head, but it was already gone. Jiannan Yu and the others observed from all angles and didn't miss this moment. Over there. The 3 people who noticed this direction shouted at the same time. The 7 of them maintained their formation and moved in this direction. The scenery slowly passed through the fog and appeared in front of them. However, the shadow that flashed past had already disappeared. Pay more attention. Jiannan Yu said. The 6 of them nodded. They didn't show any signs of nervousness. They just calmly observed their surroundings. Sword Demon couldn't help but admire them. In terms of temperament, these guys were true experts. Hey, you guys are just talking nonsense. Have you guys not told me your location in a long time? At this time, Han family young master said in the channel. Oh. Sword Demon responded and immediately reported his coordinates. Now that he had taken over this job, he could see it more clearly than Gu Fei. Brother Yu and I will be there soon. Han family young master replied. Fuck, young master is already here. Go die. Yutian Shinming scolded Unscathed in battle. He's close. Unscathed in battle was also helpless. What's the situation? Han family young master asked. Jiannan Yu and the others are loitering around the coordinates XXX, XXX. Just now, a very fast shadow flashed past. It should be the boss. Sword Demon said. So you're saying that we can confirm that the boss is there? Han family young master asked. I'm sure. Sword Demon nodded. With such fast movement speed, if it wasn't the boss, then it was the GM. That's enough. Qianli, do it. Han family young master said. How despicable. Gu Fei sighed. After finding out the boss's location, he killed them and then slowly killed the boss. How could this person be so despicable? Gu Fei thought like this, but he didn't have any mental baggage. He had been waiting for a long time to make his move. He grabbed the Night Stream light sword and prepared to rush out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew past him. The extremely agile Gu Fei immediately turned around. The dark gray shadow was already behind him. Gu Fei didn't have time to think as he pushed his sword out to meet the gray shadow. A large force struck the sword and Gu Fei was instantly sent flying. Chapter 436. System bosses always belong to the general public and not a specific person. As such, although Wandering Bladesman's group was clearly aiming for the boss and Gu Fei's group was aiming for Wandering Bladesman, it didn't affect the boss attacking Gu Fei first. Everyone was also blindly wandering around the area. Southern Azure's group of 7 stood in a circle with their backs facing each other. Sword Ghoul was in stealth mode. Gu Fei was the only one standing so arrogantly in the fog. If the boss didn't stab him, it would be a disgrace to the system's high intelligence. NPCs wouldn't show any killing intent, so when the Misty Assassin pounced on Gu Fei from behind, he didn't notice it at all. As an assassin, it was very good at hiding itself. It moved at such a high speed without making a sound. However, because it was moving too fast, there was a flaw. The high-speed movement caused the air to flow, which was commonly known as wind. Perhaps to a normal player, this bit of wind was nothing, but to Gu Fei, he was sharp enough to notice it. He nimbly turned around and blocked the attack. Against Gu Fei, an NPC with no murderous intent actually had an innate advantage in ambushing him. Slowly walking up to him and stabbing him in the back, the effect might be even better than what it was doing now. Unfortunately, the NPC designer probably didn't think of this. The Misty Assassin's attack didn't succeed, so it turned around and disappeared into the fog. Gu Fei blocked the attack, but he couldn't negate the force of the attack. His entire body was sent flying, and he also turned into a black shadow, flying in the fog. There! 3 of Wandering Bladesman's group of 7 who could see this direction shouted. Everyone turned their heads and looked in that direction. Indeed, they saw a shadow quickly rush out of the fog. It didn't look like it was running, but flying. Be careful! Wandering Azure Sword shouted. The 7 of them rotated in a circle, with him facing the shadow. The knight cast Blessing of Endurance on him, and the 2 priests prepared to heal him. Wandering Azure Sword raised his shield in front of him. He wanted to take this opportunity to see just how high the Misty Assassin's damage was. In the end, the black shadow did not fly all the way to them. It had already fallen halfway. Furthermore, no matter how one looked at it, it did not look like it was going to charge over and attack them. This was because its butt was actually facing Jian Nanyu and the others. After the man landed on the ground, he staggered a few steps before he managed to steady himself. Then, he turned around and waved at the others. Don't panic, it's me, it's me. Fuck, the 7 of them shouted in unison. At the same time, Glue's arrows and fiery cloak spells had already been blasted out. Gu Fei darted out of the way. Blackwater also wanted to rush out but was stopped by Jian Nan. Don't mess up the formation. One of the 7 core members immediately shouted, he's not a boss. A boss isn't like this. Jian Nan said without turning his head, he's not a boss. He's better than a boss. His hands turned soft, and he was confused. He did not understand the profound meaning behind Jian Nanyo's words. The person in front of him had a smile on his face. He wore a black mage robe and held a sword in his hand. He had dodged the arrows and spells with great agility. Jian Nan suddenly understood. This wasn't a boss, he was a monster. Bosses at least had a class system. What was up with this guy? It was impossible for Glue and Fiery Cloak to only attack in one wave. Arrows and spells came one after another. However, in the face of 2 attacks, Gu Fei was very calm. He casually waved his sword and dispelled the attacks. When Fiery Cloak cast a large area of effect spell, he would move and close in on the circle of 7 people. Tighten up, Jian Nan suddenly ordered. He remembered that Gu Fei could teleport. If he suddenly flew into the gap between them and cast 900 degrees dual flame flash, everyone would be turned into ashes. Even if they thought their health was high, don't forget that it was 900 degrees. It was 2.5 circles. Half of them would be hit by his dual flame flash 3 times. How could anyone survive? Everyone understood what he meant and immediately moved closer to each other. Their main targets were Glue and Flaming Cloak anyway, so they just needed to give the 2 of them enough space to escape. So they squeezed back to back. The one in the middle felt his hands go soft and was a little out of breath. Jian Nan looked back at him. Hold on. He nodded with determination in his eyes. He felt that the time to test himself had finally come. Gu Fei also stopped in his tracks when he saw the other party's actions. Indeed, his original plan was to use dual flame flash to deal with the other party in one go after closing in. He didn't expect his plan to be seen through by the other party, and the other party had squeezed out the space first, so he had to kill them one by one from the periphery. Just when Gu Fei was about to attack again, he suddenly heard a shout, "Behind you!" Gu Fei was shocked. He knew that the assassin was behind him again. This must be a notification from the sword demon. As soon as he turned around, he saw the gray shadow rushing out of the fog and stabbing at Gu Fei. This time, he could see clearly that the misty assassin's movement speed was much faster than Swift's slender waist dance. It was definitely a strong boss. Gu Fei quickly moved a few steps to the side. The misty assassin was already in front of him. It waved its arm and stabbed forward. It was a dull and gray dagger. However, this time, Gu Fei was prepared. It wasn't hard to block this attack. The opponent didn't seem to use much strength this time. It immediately retracted its hand after the attack failed. It suddenly flipped into the air and waved its arm. In the eyes of a normal person, everything was dazzling. However, Gu Fei's eyesight was far better than a normal person's. He could clearly see where the opponent's attack came from. He flicked his wrist and raised his sword into the air. The sword flowers collided with the opponent's attack. With a series of clanging sounds, the attack was completely blocked. Although Gu Fei's attacks weren't as fast as the misty assassin's, his technique was much better than this rigid robot. The direction of each stab was adjusted in the most concise way. In summary, the misty assassin's attack speed was fast and the range was large. On the other hand, Gu Fei's attack speed was slow and the range was small. Therefore, in the end, the time taken for each attack was almost the same. No one could do anything to the other. In reality, Gu Fei had a way to pierce through the opponent's attack. However, the problem was that this wasn't a fight between real people. It was a boss. In a fight between real people, a single stab to the throat would end the opponent's life. Now that he was facing a boss, it didn't matter where the stab landed. It was impossible to instantly kill the boss. Moreover, the system NPCs wouldn't retreat just because they were hit. Next, Gu Fei could only be strangled by the opponent's beautiful dagger rain. Therefore, he could only fight head-on with his opponent. This was a low-level fight, but in the eyes of outsiders, it was incomparably exciting. Both sides brandished their weapons and exchanged countless blows in an instant. The misty assassin's attack came to an abrupt stop. In mid-air, it borrowed strength from somewhere and suddenly flew back. When it landed on the ground, it had already disappeared into the fog. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. Although it was only a short fight, it consumed a lot of energy. His left hand reached out and pulled an arrow from his right shoulder. He threw it to the ground and turned around to face the 7 people. Just as Gu Fei was being attacked by the misty assassin, Flaming Cloak and Glue also wanted to take advantage of the situation, but they were stopped by Jian Nan. He was worried that this attack would attract the boss's aggro, and the misty assassin that was originally attacking Gu Fei would pounce on them instead. Gu Fei was already very scary. Now that the boss was also attracted, wouldn't it be suicidal? Hearing this, the others felt that it was reasonable. In the end, Flaming Cloak released a small fireball and Glue released a tracking arrow. Both attacks were low damage but foolproof. They wouldn't miss the boss's attack. They wanted to use this opportunity to interfere with Gu Fei and help the boss. However, Gu Fei completely ignored them and focused on dealing with the Misty Assassin. His intention to interfere with the boss was obviously not achieved. Although this round was over, Gu Fei knew that he was in a very bad situation. It could be said that he was surrounded by enemies. I can't be so arrogant anymore. Gu Fei thought and temporarily gave up on the idea of dealing with the 7 people. He turned around and ran into the fog. This might not matter to the boss, but at least he wouldn't be harassed by these 7 people. If he kept using small fireballs and tracking arrows, no matter how low his damage was, he wouldn't be able to endure it. After hiding in the fog, Gu Fei took a piece of bread and ate it while thinking about how to deal with the Misty Assassin. This guy moved quickly and attacked quickly, but if he was willing to face Gu Fei head-on, Gu Fei felt that he would eventually find a way to deal with it. The problem was that this guy was currently in the fog. If he suddenly appeared and attacked, he wouldn't be able to immediately retreat. If this continued, Gu Fei felt that he still couldn't afford it. In the end, he was also a human. He wasn't a tireless, programmed robot that would never be careless. Be careful, they're moving in the direction you're retreating. Sword Demon warned. You be careful too. Gu Fei said. When Sword Demon warned him while in stealth, those guys definitely knew that there was already a thief in stealth, but they didn't make a sound. It was probably because it was a sudden sound and they didn't hear Sword Demon's position. At this time, they must be 120% focused. As long as Sword Demon made a slight opening, they would definitely blast him out. Gu Fei's small piece of bread didn't have any effect when he saw a group of people in the fog. He knew that those guys were coming over and immediately dodged. What's the situation? On this side, Han family young master and brother Yu finally arrived and immediately asked. Be careful. The boss is nearby, be careful of it attacking you. Gu Fei warned. No way. We just arrived and they're already attacking us. Jian Nan Yu and those brats didn't even aggro them. Han family young master said. After a moment of silence in the channel, Sword Demon said, Qianli is aggroing them. Wahahaha, you really are an expert. How about it, are you going to solo the boss again? Han family young master's words were filled with mockery. From Gu Fei's warning just now, he could tell that Gu Fei probably wouldn't be able to win against the boss this time. As soon as this message was sent, there were 2 hurried, ping-pang, sounds in the fog in front of them. Han family young master and brother Yu turned their heads and saw a black figure fly out. This time, Gu Fei didn't think about standing firm. After taking a few steps back, he fell on his back at the feet of Han family young master and brother Yu. TSK, experts are really different, huh? Can you still charge or charge backwards? Han family young master said to brother Yu. Chapter 437. Gu Fei fell flat on his back, looking extremely ugly. Even though he had been knocked over by someone before, this time, he had fallen in front of someone he knew. His embarrassment deepened, especially with the venomous tongue of the Han clan's young master mercilessly mocking him. Even Gu Fei felt like he had lost some face. However, it was in times like this that he had to appear calm. Wasn't there a saying, never let your opponent understand what you're thinking? Although the Han family young master wasn't his opponent, if Gu Fei showed an embarrassed expression, it would definitely make him feel even more proud, and his mockery would only become fiercer. Therefore, not only did Gu Fei not show an embarrassed expression, he instead looked at the 2 while lying on the ground and smiled, so you guys are here. I'm sorry, I accidentally saw your sorry state. The Han family young master said. You're welcome, if you want to be embarrassed too, I can help you create an opportunity. Gu Fei said. While the 2 were arguing, it was fortunate that brother Yu had a kind heart, and wanted to help Gu Fei up. However, as soon as he walked forward and bent down, Gu Fei and Han family young master shouted together, "Get out of the way!" Brother Yu was startled, and couldn't help but shrink to the side. When he looked up again, he saw a gray figure leaping high up in the fog, and then suddenly diving down at a high speed that didn't conform to the laws of physics. Its target was Gu Fei, who was on the ground. So many preludes, it's such a waste of speed. Gu Fei looked down on the misty assassin's efficiency, and quickly rolled on the ground, dodging to the side. If this guy could still change direction in midair, then Gu Fei would have admitted defeat. Reality proved that the system wasn't that shameless. Gu Fei dodged, and the misty assassin still completed its attack in midair. It half-squatted on the ground, and held the dagger with both hands in a stabbing position. At this time, the Han family young master and brother Yu were only 10 centimeters away from it. The misty assassin's body paused, and this pause made the Han family young master and brother Yu feel as long as a century. If the haze assassin were to suddenly attack the two of them, they would have absolutely no chance of retaliating. They could only pray that the haze assassin would follow the rules and continue to pursue its aggro target, Gu Fei. The misty assassin didn't disappoint them. After a pause that seemed to last for a century, it turned around and rushed out with a whoosh. It was still holding the dagger with both hands, and swung it upwards in an arc, as if it wanted to cut Gu Fei in half. Of course, Gu Fei didn't give it the chance. He crouched and jumped up, using this opportunity to prolong the opponent's attack and buy time to land on the ground. He pressed his sword down with both hands, and blocked the misty assassin's attack. However, the impact of this attack was also very strong. Of course, Gu Fei couldn't stand still in midair, and he could only use the momentum to fly away. The misty assassin actually continued to chase, and it flew up and stabbed out with its sword. Gu Fei once again accurately crossed the sword in front of his chest, and with a ding sound, Gu Fei was once again shot out like a cannonball, and in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the thick fog. The misty assassin once again landed in a half-crouching position, and then quickly rushed out. Dozens of meters away in the fog, there seemed to be a crisp sound of weapons clashing. The Han family young master and brother Yu looked at each other. It was obvious that this boss's strength was far more terrifying than they had expected. "This boss is really scary, what's its name?" Brother Yu mumbled, his intelligence dictionary didn't have this kind of scary system creature. What's even scarier is Qianli, he still didn't die. Does he have a limit or not? The Han family young master finally expressed his shock towards Gu Fei's ability, because this was really beyond his imagination. The Han family young master felt that he couldn't even see the misty assassin's attack clearly, and this guy could still accurately block it again and again. In the fog, the short and rapid sound of weapons clashing was faintly discernible, sometimes far, sometimes close, sometimes left, and sometimes right. Everyone couldn't help but hold their breath. They couldn't see the scene of the battle, but just the sound and the direction of the sound was enough to completely affect them. This included Jian Nan's group of 7. For a moment, they forgot that the two people who were fighting were originally their targets. They were originally advancing towards the fog that Gu Fei had retreated into. They were even hoping that Gu Fei would be pushed into their attack range by the misty assassin again. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case. They heard the sound of the two sides fighting, but Gu Fei wasn't pushed back again. Then, they heard it again and again, the location of the fight kept changing. The 7 of them kept moving in this square formation, but they couldn't keep up with the changes in the direction of the sound. When the sound was far away, they were very anxious and wanted to break up the formation and chase after it. However, the sound would suddenly be very close, so they immediately gave up on this idea. Sometimes, they could even see the two people's figures flying through the fog. The 7 of them had ashen faces at this moment. After the 900 degrees dual flame flash, Gu Fei's strength had risen again in their hearts. He's actually so fast. In the fog, 2 figures, one black and one gray, suddenly flashed past at almost the same speed. No one made a sound. It was a deathly silence. His hands, stuck in the middle of the 7 people, felt the change in the atmosphere. Ever since he first came into contact with these 7 people, the calmness and composure they had always displayed had now disappeared. Each of their faces were more or less filled with fear and disbelief. From time to time, they would look at the people around them, as if they were looking for each other's comfort. This time, the 7 of them had made the mistake of panicking. It was true that Gu Fei was able to block the Haze Assassin's attacks, but he wasn't as fast as the Haze Assassin. His current speed was due to the Haze Assassin's repeated attacks. It was completely out of his control. Their only regret was that the fog prevented them from seeing Gu Fei's sorry state as he was sent flying. Occasionally, they would see 2 figures flashing by at high speed. Accompanied by the sounds of fighting, the 7 of them couldn't help but feel apprehensive. What do we do? Do we advance or retreat? The 7 of them were pondering this question. At this moment, on the Child Elite Group's side, Sword Demon also asked the same question, what do we do? Han Family Young Master replied easily, let Qianli take care of the boss. We'll prepare to deal with Jian Nanyu. Due to the Misty Assassin's style of hiding from time to time after a few attacks, Gu Fei still had the time to look at the news. Seeing the Han family's young master's words, Gu Fei really wanted to go and chop him to death. Facing the Misty Assassin, Gu Fei was 100% at a disadvantage. He still hadn't found a chance to win, and he didn't even have a chance to counterattack. If this continued, he would be killed by the Misty Assassin, and they would kill Jian Nanyu. This was the legendary, losing both his life and money. At this moment, Gu Fei was still thinking about killing Jian Nanyu to earn money. This was the quality of a person who was loyal to their ideals. This Sword Demon was a bit hesitant. Ha, Qianli, can you hold on? Han Family Young Master asked. Hold on my ass. Gu Fei finally couldn't hold it in and cursed. He instantly felt a lot better. It was as if the confidence he had lost from being chased by the Misty Assassin had returned. Ha, don't be so violent. Face the enemy calmly and hold on. We'll help you deal with the boss after we take care of them. Fuck, Yutian and Wushang, are you 2 idiots here yet? Han Family Young Master also started cursing. We're here, we're here. Their laughter seemed to be coming from the channel. Where's the boss? Unscathed in Battle asked impatiently. Didn't you see our plan in the channel? We'll take care of Jian Nanyu first, then we'll deal with the boss, Han Family Young Master said. Leave Jian Nanyu to me. Gu Fei yelled. That depends on the situation. If you can take care of the boss before we take care of Jian Nanyu and make it back, ha ha ha. Han Family Young Master said. Despicable. Gu Fei was furious. On the other side of the fog, unscathed in Battle's deep voice could be heard, Jian Nanyu, where the fuck are you? Get the fuck out here. Get the fuck out here, get the fuck out here. Yutian Shenming chimed in from the side. I don't think I've set up a strategy yet. Han Family Young Master said to Brother Yu. Everyone's a lot more excited when they're facing the boss, Brother Yu said. But let's just let these 2 shout. It's good to pressure them a bit, Han Family Young Master said. As expected, just as Jian Nanyu and the others were hesitating about whether they should advance or retreat, unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming's shouts could be heard from the fog, causing the 7 to panic even more. Have they all arrived? I think it's 2 people. In the fog, there were 2 voices. How do you know how many there are? We can't go in that direction, there must be a trap. Unknowingly, the 7 of them were leaning towards retreating. They were currently denying the direction where Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming's shouts were coming from. How could they know that the 2 of them were just yelling without any rhyme or reason? Qianli, do you have time to check the coordinates of the flaming cloak? Han Family Young Master said. There was no reply, but everyone could vaguely hear the crisp sound of weapons clashing. I'm busy. Han Family Young Master mumbled. He then told the 2, don't keep shouting in the same place. Start running and change positions. The 2 acted according to the plan. They continued to shout at Jian Nanyu and the others as they moved. Lines like, "Do you dare tell me your coordinates? Let's fight to the death." They're changing positions. The few of them looked at Jian Nanyu with troubled expressions when they heard what he said. Jian Nanyu sighed. Being the boss might seem impressive, but he had to bear the responsibility during crucial moments. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally made a decision. "Let's retreat first." Jian Nanyu clapped his hands. "Brother, unfortunately, our enemies have caught up to us. I'm afraid we won't be able to help you with today's mission." His hands turned soft, and he looked disappointed. He could understand that Jian Nanyu could no longer help him continue the mission when his enemies came knocking on his door. However, Jian Nanyu's decision was not to fight to the death with his enemies, but to retreat first. His hands went soft. He suddenly felt that the image of this expert was not as lofty as he had imagined. Chapter 438. Wandering Sword, Get Out Here. Unscathed in battle, and Yutian Shinming continued to yell as they strode through the fog. They didn't reveal themselves at all and only used sound interference. The sword demon was guiding them in terms of coordinates, and he had been stealthily moving beside Wandering Sword's group of 7. Wandering Sword didn't forget about this, so he immediately ordered Flaming Cloak to carpet bomb the area around him. At this moment, Wandering Sword's group of 7's target was different from before, so their method of dealing with Sword Demon was different too. Previously, they hoped to find out where he was and kill him directly. Now, they only hoped to force him to retreat so that he wouldn't pay attention to them anymore. However, the Sword Ghoul was much bolder than they had imagined. As soon as he saw the enemy's spells bombarding him, he could only retreat in advance if he wanted to maintain his stealth state. Hence, he simply cancelled his stealth state and appeared in front of the 7 of them. Glue and Flaming Cloak immediately aimed at their target and attacked, but Sword Demon easily dodged them. In terms of movement speed, he was faster than Gu Fei. In terms of judging the enemy's attacks, he had the in-game judgment that Gu Fei didn't have. For example, when Flaming Cloak raised his hand, he knew where the center of the spell was, how large the area of the spell was, and when he should run to avoid it. Mage experts like Yutian Shinming and Drifting could make these judgments at a glance, and so could Sword Demon. Unscathed in Battle said that he was the best warrior in the game, and Yutian Shinming said that he was the best mage in the game. However, they were in the limelight when Sword Demon didn't choose the mage or warrior classes. Sword Demon's strength in the game had surpassed the boundaries of his classes. He was number 1 in everything he played. Even though he was a thief now, he didn't neglect to research the other classes. This was something that Gu Fei had never done before. That guy probably didn't even have a 100% understanding of the mage he was playing as. In the face of such an opponent, the glue and the Flaming Cloak could not hit him easily. Compared to Gu Fei, he just didn't directly strike down the opponent's attack. Even so, the 2 of them still couldn't do anything to him. Moreover, the Sword Demon acted like a boss, retreating into the fog from time to time to rest, but soon emerging again and continuing to wander around the 7 people. The 7 of them were being watched so blatantly that they were going crazy. Right now, the boss's aggro should be all on that Chinli drunk. Do we still need to maintain this formation? Blackwater felt bitter when he saw the assassin's confidence. After being pushed into the firewall by Gu Fei, he had already fallen to level 39. He was no longer an assassin, but a lowly thief. The difference between level 38 and level 39, or level 40 and level 42, even if there was a difference of 2 levels, did not have an absolute impact on one's strength. However, there was an absolute divide between level 39 and level 40. This was because after level 40, when players changed their class, there would be a class correction. Some attributes would be enhanced by the new class's characteristics, and the data obtained would also be stronger. Therefore, unless a level 40 player was a hopeless melon, it was impossible for him to lose to a level 39 player. After falling from level 40 to level 39, Shifeng felt as if he was riding a bicycle instead of a car. The difference was just too great. Calm down. Jiannan understood Blackwater's feelings, but he did not need to be impulsive. Be careful not to be lured into a trap. Jiannan was really thinking too much. Sword Demon was just playing around. How could the child elite group set up a trap at this time? The strongest assassin was playing with the boss. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in battle had changed to wandering around and bluffing singers. The only one with attack power, Sword Demon, was advancing and retreating in front of them. What kind of trap could Han family young master and brother Yu, a priest and a knight, set up? Once he had this kind of mentality, he would truly fall into a trap. Layers of fog shrouded his heart. Jiannan started to be filled with doubts. Furthermore, he kept using his doubts to influence the people around him. In fact, they didn't need to be calm at this moment. Instead, they needed to be a little impulsive and hot-blooded. They boldly found a direction and rushed out, ignoring the shouts and harassment and the sword ghouls' advance and retreat. The young master elite group didn't have any big moves that could do anything to them. In the end, the Han clan's young master had seen through their thoughts and used the foggy weather to make them fall head over heels. In their hearts, they felt that there was a huge army behind the fog, waiting for them to enter the tiger's mouth. Under such continuous tension, the 7 people began to become more and more anxious. Due to everyone's different psychological qualities, the symptoms they showed were also mild and severe. Jiannan could still grit his teeth and continue to think of countermeasures calmly, but Blackwater finally collapsed completely. When he saw that Glue and Flaming Coat's attacks had failed again, he suddenly roared, "I'll fight you to the death." He left the team and rushed towards Sword Demon. "Blackwater!" Jiannan shouted to stop him. The two beside him were not prepared for this guy's sudden reaction and could not stop him in time. Blackwater ignored him and pounced towards Sword Demon. At this time, they needed to be impulsive and hot-blooded, but they didn't need the hot-blooded passion of one person alone. This result was worse than the 7 of them persisting in suspicion. Seeing Blackwater rush over, Sword Demon calmly retreated. Blackwater ignored the shouts of his companions and followed closely. He used sprinting and in the blink of an eye, he chased after Sword Demon and disappeared into the fog. "Fuck!" Jiannan cursed. The 6 hurriedly moved in this direction. Blackwater's loud shouts came from the fog, but it was not like the sound of weapons clashing like Gu Fei and the Fog Assassin. When the 6 hurriedly approached, Blackwater's shouts suddenly stopped. There was only one figure left in the fog. As Jiannan and the others approached, Sword Demon stood there as if nothing had happened and said expressionlessly, "He's level 38. A thief above level 40 was not a match for an assassin." Furthermore, Blackwater was facing the top expert in the online gaming world. He had already lost his cool and was only relying on his hot-bloodedness. If hot-bloodedness worked, it would be called a hot-bloodedness manga. Unfortunately, this was an online game. Therefore, Blackwater was defeated without any suspense. It only took Sword Demon 5 seconds to kill him. It's still too slow. The Sword Ghost thought. If Qianli were to finish him off, 1 second would be enough. This was a master. He would never be complacent and always pursue a higher realm, although Sword Demon's pursuit was too high. Don't let this guy go. Huolini was also angry. He felt guilty for Blackwater's death. Although he wasn't responsible for it this time, it still affected his mood. His shouts were a little crazy. He raised his staff with a roar. Everything was silent. Everyone was waiting for Huolini's chant, but he raised his staff and didn't say anything. The surroundings were quiet. Huolini was horrified to find that he couldn't remember what the chant was. According to scientific research, nervousness often damaged people's memory. For example, during an exam, they would be too nervous to remember the exercises that they had reviewed countless times. During an interview, they would be too nervous to introduce themselves clearly. To exaggerate, they might not even remember their own name for a while. As for Huolini, he couldn't remember the chant he had chanted countless times. This group of people was under too much pressure at this time. only a small part of them did not want to die. A large part of them were trapped here, feeling helpless and frustrated, and so on. All kinds of negative emotions piled up one after another. How could anyone not be affected? Blackwater was the first to lose his balance. Huolini was about to attack but suddenly stopped. Seeing this, Jian Nanyu hurriedly reminded the others, "Don't panic." "Then what should we do?" Jian Nanyu couldn't come up with a clear idea for a long time, which was one of the reasons why everyone was getting more and more restless. "Fight! Charge!" Jian Nanyu finally gritted his teeth and said. They had to do this at this time. They couldn't control their emotions anymore. Mentality was very important. Athletes were generally divided into 3 levels: body, mentality, and technique. If they didn't pass any one of them, it would be hard for them to become great. At this time, instead of letting everyone panic, it was better to just charge. Frankly speaking, Jian Nanyu had lost his balance. At this time, when he called for everyone to charge, he didn't want to fight with all his might. He wanted to give up. They're going to charge. Sword Demon saw it clearly and immediately retreated. No matter how strong he was, he knew he wasn't as strong as Gu Fei, who could fight 6 or 7 top-notch experts at the same time. Earlier than expected. Han family young master said. He had hoped that the opponents would lose control one by one and then defeat them one by one. In the end, after one of them died, they all lost control and swarmed toward them. In a head-on confrontation, it was 6 against 6. Jian Nanyu's hands were weak. This rookie didn't know whether he would help or not. Both sides were top-notch experts. If they faced Child Elite Group head-on, they wouldn't have the confidence to win. Otherwise, they would have swarmed up already. Why would they need to cause a mental breakdown? This sudden change caught the Han family's young master off guard. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming had been ordered by him to sing on the periphery. Unscathed in battle's speed definitely wouldn't be able to intercept them in time. As for Yutian Shinming, when he was with unscathed in battle, he had unscathed in battle's speed. If he left unscathed in battle, his speed would be in the negative. In the end, it was 3 against 6. Moreover, they only had Sword Demon, who was a high damage dealer. The situation was quite disadvantageous. Try your best to stall for time. You two, hurry up. Han family young master gave instructions to both sides. All the tactics, strategies, and tricks that could be used had stopped at this point. Next would be a close combat battle. It could only be a battle of courage and ruthlessness. Han family young master faintly felt that something wasn't right. A battle of courage and ruthlessness? It was clear that the opponent was at the top. Jian Nanyu and the others had already changed their formation. He held his shield and was at the front. Glue and Flaming Cloak were on the left and right. 2 priests and a knight were at the back. They rushed toward Sword Demon with large strides. Brother, you buffed Sword Demon. Han family young master looked at the opponent's momentum and sighed, if they can't do it, then let them go. There's no rush. Sword Demon didn't say anything. He just gripped his dagger tightly. Chapter 439. Even if he couldn't stop them, he could at least take care of 1 to 3 of them. Sword Demon had this belief and confidence. He could see that the other side was emotionally unstable. Even though they might be brave at this moment, they would definitely lose their usual tacit cooperation. As for his side, Sword Demon glanced at the Han family young master who had fought alongside him countless times. As the unfavorable side, they were also a bit nervous. However, if there were some people who wouldn't be affected by the situation, then the Han family young master was definitely one of them. His extreme narcissism was a bit abnormal, but it was undeniably the strongest form of self-confidence. Sword Demon believed that even if this guy was being stepped on, he would still act like he was the #1 expert in the world. Sword Demon sometimes thought that this guy wasn't narcissism at all, he was just hypnotizing himself, even though the situation was unfavorable, the Han family young master definitely wouldn't make any mistakes. Their cooperation would still be flawless. Thinking about this, Sword Demon felt that he could take care of 2 to 3 opponents. Jian Nanyo's group had already rushed out of the fog. When they saw that there weren't thousands of soldiers and horses in front of them like they had imagined, but only 3 people, their mood became even worse. The ones who had been harassing them were the unknown enemies, hiding in the fog. At this moment, if they could see the army in front of them, they could at least get an explanation and feel more at ease. But there were only 3 people. Only 3 people. This didn't seem like a trap at all. Where was the real trap, the real ambush? The 6 of them were about to go crazy. However, they couldn't stop. This rush was the last bit of fighting spirit that they had accumulated. Stopping meant that they were willing to compromise and give up. Of course, they wouldn't give up. Since they couldn't see the army, then they would vent their anger on the 3 of them first. Fiery Robe was the first to stop. He wanted to chant. His feet couldn't move while chanting non-instant spells. This time, he didn't forget this rule. Fire Beacon City, rise. Huarini loudly chanted as flames soared to the sky behind Brother Yu and the Han family young master. However, the 2 of them did not even move as they listened to his chanting. The Sword Demon could see where the spell was cast, and so could his longtime comrade, the Han family young master. The Han family young master could be said to be gifted in things such as coordinate positioning and distance perception. He might be able to see things more clearly than many people. Moreover, this was not a difficult thing to do. Too many experts could do this. At most, they would have to change their positions in the middle of the battle and miss a moment of observation. However, it was absolutely impossible to be hit by a spell in the first round. Huazhani should have known that his opponent was no ordinary rookie. Unfortunately, the fiery blazing robe had experienced too many setbacks today, too many. His spells were seen through time and time again without any results. He thought that his Fire Beacon City was foolproof, but 100 Era's strategist flew up the wall and Gu Fei teleported through as if nothing had happened. At Waterside City, he burned himself to death inside his own Fire Beacon City. Someone curiously asked him if he had calculated his PK points. Afterward, he led the Green Narrow Guild to meet up with his brothers and was almost completely annihilated at the seaside of Waterside City. At Cloud Mist City, everyone picked a target customer. He chose a Martian whose name no one knew. Then, in order to escape, he implicated Black Flame and burned himself to death inside his Fire Beacon City. This time, no one talked to him about his PK points. If someone did, then he would have collapsed even more. It was precisely because of this little PK points that led to their current situation. The flaming cloak was surrounded by enough frustration. At this moment, he saw that the knight and the priest were not afraid of his spells at all. They calmly stood in the same spot while his Fire Beacon City was like a motherfucking backdrop. The flaming cloak's remaining confidence easily disappeared. His Fire Beacon City originally didn't want to burn the 2 of them. He only wanted to set up a barrier to block their path of retreat so that the other armies wouldn't be able to come over so easily. In the end, the 2 of them didn't do anything, but they still knocked him down without doing anything. The second step of the Flaming Cloak's plan was to immediately unleash a sea of fire with the Grand Fiery Tree 1000 layers flame once the Fire Beacon City was cut off. At this moment, he didn't make a move because he forgot that he had lost his memory. He didn't know what he should do. He could only foolishly follow their group forward like a warrior. The real warrior was Jian Nanyu. He rushed to the front and was the one with the most rationality among the 6. He stared at the Sword Demon in front of him and raised his shield. He was ready to use a charge to knock the Sword Demon flying. The Sword Demon ran to the side of them. It was true that they wanted to stop the 6 of them, but this did not mean that it would be a head-on contest of strength. If the Sword Demon directly rushed forward to intercept them, then it would mean that he had also lost his mind. How could one person fight against 6 people head-on? The person who would do this was Gu Fei, not the Sword Demon. Even though the sword demon admired Gu Fei, he was not stupid enough to imitate Gu Fei's fighting style. He still had his own way of thinking, and he would use a fighting style that maximized the characteristics of his profession. The assassin in the mist had given everyone a good explanation of this fighting style: never attack from the front. This was an assassin. The sword demon was an assassin now, so he avoided the warrior's attack and circled to the side. The flank was the flaming cloak, who had no idea what the flaming cloak was doing. The sword demon had no idea what the flaming cloak was doing at the moment. He just felt that the sorcerer was quite a threat, especially when everyone had almost died in his hands in Sunset City. Therefore, he chose this side to see if there was a chance to get rid of this big problem. The flaming cloak did not react at all, and he continued to rush forward like an idiot. Flaming cloak. Jian Nanyu was stunned. He had already turned around and was ready to deal with the sword demon. Usually, the flaming cloak would quickly flash under the cover of his shield, but today, the flaming cloak ran in front of him very handsomely and continued to rush forward like a warrior. Even the sword demon was a little confused. They could not imagine that the flaming cloak had collapsed to this extent because no one had experienced how rough the flaming cloak had been today. Flaming cloak, several voices were yelling at him. The flaming cloak suddenly woke up. He had lost his memory, not Blackwater. That guy had lost his hearing. After waking up, the flaming cloak realized that he had left the team and was standing alone in the blank area of the battlefield. It was a big taboo for a sorcerer. The color of the flaming cloak's face changed. Even Brother Yu would not miss such an opportunity. He dashed forward and slashed at the flaming cloak. The slash was not light. The damage of the Dark Knight was very obvious after the change of profession. With the same stat points, the Dark Knight ranked second among all professions in terms of normal attacks, only losing to the Violent Warrior. The slash woke the flaming cloak up. At the same time, he also noticed the strange status on his body. Brother Yu's Sword of Dusk had a 10% chance of weakening the opponent. The flaming cloak was lucky enough to activate it, but unfortunately, it was activated on the flaming cloak. It was meaningless. The weakened status would greatly weaken the physical attacks of the target. The flaming cloak was a sorcerer, so it did not matter if he was weakened. Brother Yu rarely fought in PvP, let alone against experts. However, it did not affect his confidence in defeating a sorcerer at close range. However, Jian Nanyu, who was about to deal with the sword demon, immediately turned around and charged at Brother Yu. Brother Yu's lack of experience in big battles immediately showed itself. He still had the bad habit of sweating and feeling weak in his legs when he fought for the first time. He did not show it when he was bullying a sorcerer at close range. Now that Jian Nanyu, who was also a melee fighter, was charging at him, Brother Yu immediately went into his mode. Clumsily tried to dodge this charge, but his movements were extremely uncoordinated. Kenan Yu was a heavy soldier who used the charge technique with a shield and a sword. The area of attack was large, and it wasn't easy to dodge. Brother Yu was running with one hand and one foot. How could he be faster? He was immediately hit by Jian Nanyu's shield and did not fly away. He was spun on the spot and fell to the ground. Sword Demon really wanted to cover his eyes. He sighed inwardly. I've long heard that Brother Yu is an expert in theoretical knowledge and a rookie in practical skills. He truly lives up to his reputation. Jian Nanyu had already saved Brother Yu by knocking over Flaming Cloak. Then, he slashed at Brother Yu who was on the ground. Brother Yu was really fated with chance today. Just now, he had used the 10% weakness. Now that he was facing charge, he was also hit by the stun chance. Not only was he lying on the ground, he was also stunned. He couldn't resist at all and could only watch helplessly as he was hit by South's sword. White light shone down. The Han family's young master used his recovery technique in time. Knights were balanced and had good defense. They wouldn't be killed so easily. With the priest healing him, Jian Nanyu couldn't do anything. However, Jian Nanyu was indeed an experienced veteran. After his attack was healed, he didn't waste any time. He immediately stepped over Brother Yu and charged at the Han family young master. Without looking back, he said to Flaming Cloak, "Finish him." Sword Demon and Han family young master were both complaining in their hearts. They didn't expect this to happen. Brother Yu had been with them for a long time. He had always been a support. Sometimes, he would fight with them, but most of the time, he would speed up when the victory was already decided. Strictly speaking, today was the first time that Brother Yu had a chance to fight on his own. Although he had a lot of PK theories, he couldn't do it without experience. Brother Yu was a perfect example. Sword Demon and Han family young master's original plan was to focus the enemy's attention on Sword Demon. He would deal with the enemy with his speed, and the Han family young master would support him from the side. They would buy as much time as they could. However, Brother Yu was knocked down after a sudden attack. It was really terrible for the enemy to defeat them one by one. Leaving Sword Demon and Han family young master aside, Brother Yu was still unconscious on the ground. Flaming Cloak was standing next to him. She raised her staff and pointed at Brother Yu in a trance. Can he dodge it this time? Flaming Cloak's confidence was ignited again. At this critical moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the fog. Then, a gray shadow flashed with blue and yellow light and flew out of the fog, falling towards the crowd. Everyone exclaimed at the same time, "Boss!" Chapter 440. The misty assassin's body flashed with electricity as it fell in front of everyone. This guy had been walking in the fog, advancing and retreating like the wind. This was the first time that everyone saw the boss clearly. It was skinny and wore a gray assassin outfit. It held a dagger in one hand and pushed itself up with the other. Everyone was shocked and couldn't help but take a step back. But while the boss was scary, the guy in the fog who hadn't appeared yet was even more terrifying. Could it be that this fellow was going to defeat the boss? Flaming Jacket's thoughts were running wild. They were both magicians, but why was there such a huge difference between them? He could solo such a powerful boss, but he could only deal with a rookie paladin who was lying on the ground. The misty assassin was obviously not dead yet, so no one dared to move. Everyone was very close to it, afraid that one move would attract the boss aggro. Although the aggro system also had a clear calculation model, this calculation model belonged to the system. What if the system was unreasonable and made a fuss? The misty assassin stood up and suddenly shook its arms. It let out a roar, and the electricity around it suddenly disappeared. Everyone turned pale with fright. So strong, so strong. What a fuss. Han family young master was still in the mood to look down on everyone. It's obviously just a dispel skill. Everyone was experienced and knowledgeable, so they immediately understood what was going on. A dispel skill was a skill that could remove physical debuffs. The misty assassin had shattered the lightning with a swing of his arms. Although it looked very cool, the truth was that he had only dispelled the paralysis effect of the electric current. After the misty assassin got rid of the paralysis effect, it immediately went back into the fog. Everyone stared at each other. Because of the boss' sudden appearance, everyone's movements immediately stopped. It was like a frozen movie. But before they could press the play button, a figure appeared in the fog again. This time, it was pure black and didn't carry any electricity. It wasn't flying, but running. Everyone could even hear its footsteps. Gu Fei. The existence that everyone believed to be even scarier than the misty assassin had suddenly appeared in front of them. The long sword was still in his hand, but his robe was filthy. Gu Fei had been rolling on the ground quite a bit during the fight with the misty assassin, so he looked like a piece of trash. Where's the boss? Gu Fei looked around after running out and asked Sword Demon. He went that way. Sword Demon pointed in the direction that misty assassin had gone. Why aren't you attacking it? Gu Fei asked. Everyone lowered their heads in shame. Just now, when the boss appeared, everyone was so scared that they didn't dare to move, afraid that they would provoke the boss. Now that they were faced with Gu Fei's question, everyone felt that it was very, very sharp. Ah. Sword Demon was also a little ashamed and quickly changed the topic. Why aren't you going after them? So strong. Everyone was filled with jealousy and hatred. They didn't dare to move even when the boss was in front of them, but this guy was chasing after the boss. The difference was the difference. While everyone was thinking this, Gu Fei didn't rush to chase after them. Instead, he looked at Sword Demon in surprise. Are you kidding me? It wasn't easy for me to shake it off and take a break. Why are you in a hurry to chase after it? Everyone was stunned again. They thought in their hearts, TSK, so you're also not a match for the boss. Jiannan and the others had just felt comfortable, but then their hearts turned cold again. This Gu Fei didn't need to go and tangle with the boss. Didn't that mean that he was going to attack them? With him joining in, how could their side still have a chance of winning? The pessimistic mood spread again, but it didn't last long. The figure in the fog appeared again. The misty assassin valiantly charged out again. It didn't recognize anyone and only charged at Gu Fei. From everyone's gaze, Gu Fei knew that there was another enemy attack behind him. He sighed and turned around to block. The misty assassin pushed him away again. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared into the fog again. Only then did everyone realize that Gu Fei and the misty assassin had just happened to appear next to them when they were fighting at high speed. In other words, the two of them were just passing by. The only difference was that the last time they fought, Gu Fei finally found an opportunity to attack. The thunder palm that he had prepared combined with teleportation, and Gu Fei accurately hit the back of the misty assassin that was rushing over. The thunder palm repelled the misty assassin, and the misty assassin's own momentum, and it was only once that the misty assassin was sent flying. After this attack, Gu Fei didn't have much mana left, but it didn't seem to affect the misty assassin at all. The rare electric paralysis that appeared during the attack was also shaken off by the misty assassin with a shake of its arm. The sound of the two fighting disappeared again after two soft sounds. It was unknown where they were fighting. At this time, everyone in the field came back to their senses. Continue. No one knew who shouted this, but it was like pressing the pause button to replay the scene. Everyone started doing what they were supposed to do. Azure Flower continued to chase after the Han family young master. The speed of the two was almost the same. Azure Flower couldn't catch up with him for a while, but once the cooldown of charge was over, he could catch up in an instant. Brother Yu was still stunned, and the flaming cloak could still kill him in one hit. Sword Demon tried his best to rush over to help, but Glue led a knight and two priests to keep him busy. The knight was a paladin, and the two priests were light priests. Although they weren't classes with strong damage output, it was 1 against 4, and Sword Demon was a class with low HP, so he didn't dare to be careless. Rapid Fireball. The flaming cloak seemed to be more awake after the pause. Looking at Brother Yu by his feet, he didn't hesitate anymore and hurriedly summoned the spell. But before he could cast it, he suddenly felt someone patting his shoulder. Huorini was startled. Before she could turn her head, she felt a tight grip on her throat. Someone had grabbed her from behind. Then, the world spun. Flaming Cloak felt as if someone was grabbing him by the neck, and then he was thrown to the ground. In the end. Forget it, I'll just die. Flaming Cloak had already lost his confidence and fighting spirit. He had just had a chance to kill Brother Yu to regain his strength, but he was interrupted by this sudden attack. He quickly returned to his state of despair and completely gave up on resisting. However, he didn't die. The fall was so fierce, but Flaming Cloak realized that his HP didn't drop that much. Before he could think about it carefully, he was kicked in the waist again. Fiery flaming robe rolled to the side on the ground. He didn't die, but he was kicked out of the battlefield. Tears streamed down Flaming Cloak's face. After kicking Flaming Cloak away, the attacker didn't stop there. He bent down and rushed into the entanglement between Sword Demon and the other 4 people. His hands formed into claws, and the two priests on the left and right had their throats locked. Then, with the momentum of his charge, the two priests were immediately pinned to the ground by their necks. Alarmed, the knight hurriedly swung his sword at the person's back. The person, who was half crouching, seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He turned around and stood up straight. With a wave of his hand, he had already caught the knight's wrist. Then, he elbowed the knight's chest and pushed the knight's wrist away. The knight's hand that was holding the sword was pushed back, and the sword was placed horizontally in front of his neck. Then, he tripped and fell on his back, still maintaining the posture of committing suicide. In the blink of an eye, the three of them had fallen to the ground. At this time, Glue had just gotten into position to shoot an arrow at the attacker, but the arrow was slapped away by the attacker. Glue hurriedly turned around and wanted to dodge, only to find that his escape route was blocked by Sword Demon. In such a short period of time, the opponent had already arrived in front of him. Fists and kicks were endless, and Glue was beaten until he kept retreating. In the end, the person jumped up and kicked the glue away. Compared to Jian Nanyu's position, he had already disappeared into the fog. The only person who could be so agile and nimble was Encyclopedic Statesman. In the blink of an eye, he had already defeated 5 people, but none of them were ruthless. Encyclopedic Statesman looked at his results with satisfaction, wiped his hands, and asked, "Who's that?" "He asked me to come here, but his people aren't here. He's busy." As Sword Demon spoke, he looked at the 5 people on the ground in shock. Encyclopedic Statesman's valiance seemed to be exactly the same as Gu Fei's. "Why are you here?" "Just passing by." "What a coincidence." Encyclopedic Statesman sighed and strode toward Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu had already stopped chasing the Han family young master. No one expected Encyclopedic Statesman's sudden appearance. They, who originally had the upper hand, were easily reversed. Only Jian Nanyu was left. However, this didn't affect his confusion about Encyclopedic Statesman's words. "Looking for me? What for?" In Jian Nanyu's impression, he had no interaction with Encyclopedic Statesman at all. It was understandable if he was helping a friend, but it sounded like he was doing it for him. Did he have any grudges with him? Which person was his friend that he had killed? That was the only thing Jian Nanyu could think of. Encyclopedic Statesman didn't answer him. He shouted, "Don't even think of running this time," and charged over. Whirlwind Slash. Seeing that Encyclopedic Statesman was approaching, Jian Nanyu suddenly swung his arms and used Whirlwind Slash. He wanted to make a final struggle. Encyclopedic Statesman quickly used the Chi Master's skill in the game, Chi Wave Shield. When the Whirlwind Slash hit, Encyclopedic Statesman was pushed back. Jian Nanyu took a step forward and continued using Whirlwind Slash, wanting to kill Encyclopedic Statesman. However, Encyclopedic Statesman suddenly leaped up and stepped on the trunk of a tree beside him. He used the momentum to complete a double jump and flew above Jian Nanyu's head. Flying Swallow Slash. Although it was a Grandmaster of Combat skill, Encyclopedic Statesman used the momentum to leap down from a high place and landed a kick on Jian Nanyu's defenseless head. The Whirlwind Slash, which was known as the strongest attack in the game, was interrupted just like that. Konami stopped spinning with his mouth agape. The encyclopedic strategist landed on the ground. His extended left hand had already reached Konami's shoulder, while his right hand moved to his waist. The heavy body of the warrior was easily thrown up by him. Naturally, he was using the Grandmaster of Combat's hugging throw. Following that, heavy punches, hooks, bouncing kicks, galloping horse shooting stars. All the Grandmaster of Combat's skills were integrated into his own fist technique by the 100 Lives Classic. Kennen Yuki finished a series of consecutive attacks in the air. Before he could land on the ground, he had already turned into white light and disappeared. Chapter 441. Everyone was in a state of stupefaction. In less than a minute, Jian Nanyu's group of 6 was beaten to the ground, and Jian Nanyu himself was killed. Even if the 6 of them were confused and dispirited, they were still experts, yet they couldn't even withstand a single blow. The remaining 5 guys were lying on the ground, not knowing if they should get up or not. They would die if they got up, but they would also die if they didn't. Given the current situation, was there any chance for them to fight and save some face? No. Not even a little bit. Fighting against Bai Jingluan would only bring humiliation to themselves. How could they save face? The 6 of them had the same thought, and they all lay on the ground in despair. Although they weren't dead, their hearts were dead. Bai Jingluan was obviously in a good mood. He extended his hand to the Han family young master and said, "I've killed them once. Pay up." "How much?" the Han family young master asked. "Tell me." Bai Jingluan was really simple. So, the Han family young master nodded and touched his pocket. Bai Jingluan glowed as he waited for his salary. After a while, the Han family young master took out a bottle from his pocket and put it in Bai Jingluan's hand. Bai Jingluan was stunned. "What's this?" "Wine." "It's on you," the Han family young master said. "Where's the money?" Bai Jingluan asked. "I don't have money right now," the Han family young master said. "I'll use this wine to make up for it." "What?" Bai Jingluan was stunned. "This wine is 200 gold coins per bottle in the tavern." The Han family young master realized that Bai Jingluan didn't seem to know the value of the wine. So expensive. Bai Jingluan was indeed shocked. He rarely went to places like taverns, and he didn't pay attention to these things, so he didn't know that wine could be sold at such a high price. Now that he realized that the wine was so expensive, he quickly held it firmly with both hands and carefully put it in his pocket as if he had found a treasure. "I earned 200 gold coins so easily." 100 Eras Jinglas thought to himself excitedly. Being a professional gamer really was a good way out. The sword demon and brother Yu stared at him with their eyes wide open. The contented expression on Bai Jingluan's face surprised them. 200 gold coins. This kind of price was enough to hire someone to kill a random passerby. Now that they were going to kill a top-tier expert like Jian Nan, it had to be at least 500 gold coins. Moreover, Jian Nanyu had a team that was inseparable. If Sword Demon and Brother Yu were to ask for a price for this operation, it would be at least 800 to 1,000 gold coins. On the other hand, 100 Era's statecraft was dismissed with 200 gold coins, and it wasn't cash either, but a check. The Han family young master waved his hands at the two and made an expression that said it was none of his business. "What about these few? Do you want me to help you take care of them?" 100 Era's Jingluan pointed at the remaining 5 who had given up resisting. "No need, we'll do it ourselves," the Han family young master said hurriedly. They didn't need a killer anymore, they just needed an executioner. He even wanted to hire people. He was really using money to play around. The 5 men, who had already lost their will to resist and were powerless, were stabbed to death by the sword ghost after it circled around them. It did not show any mercy at all. In today's battle, Jian Nanyo's team of 7 suffered a great loss. After falling out of the top 5 and top 10, everyone fell below level 40 this time. They were bound to be depressed for a while. This was only the loss in terms of level and EXP. As for when their mental scars would heal, it would depend on their luck. After taking care of Jian Nanyo's team, their next target was the boss. This was an unexpected gain. They didn't expect to receive such benefits from hunting Jian Nanyu. As expected of a robber, they had a natural sense for profit. Just as they were thinking about this, 2 figures appeared in the fog. One was big and one was small, one was tall and one was short. They rushed into everyone's field of vision. As soon as they saw them, one of them held a great sword in each hand, while the other pulled the bowstring. They yelled together, "Where's Jian Nanyu? Come out and fight to the death with us." Everyone looked at the 2 of them. "Where's he? Where's he?" Unscathed in battle yelled. "It's over," the sword demon told him calmly. "What?" The two masters were surprised. They looked around and asked nervously, "Where's the boss?" "Not yet." Sword Demon wiped his sweat. So that's what they were concerned about. Why is 100 Era's Jingluan here too? Unscathed in battle saw 100 Era's Jingluan. "Hi, how are you guys?" 100 Era's Jingluan greeted the two of them with satisfaction after earning 200 gold coins. "Where's the boss? Where's the boss?" Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming yelled. "Ask Qianli." Sword Demon said. Thus, the two of them yelled in the channel. However, Gu Fei was probably fighting with the boss, so he didn't reply. Thus, everyone hurried to eat and recover, waiting to attack the boss. At that moment, a weak voice came from the corner of the field. "I found the boss." His hands went soft. When Jian Nanyu and the others started to fight with all their might, he followed behind. However, after the battle started, he stood to the side. The Sword Ghost and the others ignored his existence. Even after the 100 Eras Classic appeared and flipped everyone over, he still let him go. Most importantly, he stood at the side like a bystander and did not help either side, making him look too dignified. At that moment, when he saw that these guys were ready to attack the boss after taking care of Jian Nanyu, he finally couldn't help but say something. Everyone looked at him. Their hands were trembling. They were really trembling. Jian Nanyu, who was already a peerless expert in his eyes, was tormented by these guys until he went crazy. He saw it with his own eyes. Han family's young master strode to his side and patted him on the back. "Rookie, you'd better hurry back to the main city. The boss is very dangerous." His hands went soft and he was depressed. Although he was unhappy, what could he do? He could only ask pitifully, "Can I see?" Han family young master didn't say anything and just made an indifferent expression. Everyone was ready. Gu Fei also sent a message at that moment. There were only 2 words. "Wait." Gu Fei's efficiency was extremely high. Just as he finished speaking, he flew out of the fog with a whoosh. This time, Gu Fei was in a much worse state than any of the previous times. At the very least, he was able to block the Haze assassin's attacks, but he was unable to neutralize the force of the attacks and was sent flying. However, this time, when he flew through the air, he left a trail of blood behind him. According to the simulation system of the parallel world, this amount of blood meant that Gu Fei's injuries weren't light. Evidently, he had been hit by the Haze assassin. Han family young master hurriedly cast a healing spell on Gu Fei. The gray figure in the fog was already moving. Unscathed in battle shouted, "He's coming." As he spoke, he took a step forward, wanting to stop the misty shadow assassin. However, the moment he took a step forward, the gray figure had already flashed past him. Zhang Wushang's mind was extremely agile. His gaze followed the misty shadow assassin's figure and he exclaimed, "So fast." Just like him, Imperial Sky Shinming, who had just witnessed the misty assassin's movements, was also extremely shocked. He had been preparing to fire an arrow, but the misty assassin's speed was so fast that it made him dizzy, and he had no idea how to aim properly. Imperial Sky Shinming finally released a homing arrow, but the arrow simply flew out. It was obvious that he hadn't locked onto his target at all. The fog assassin's speed gave the two experts a head-on blow. The fog assassin ignored them and charged straight at Gu Fei. In the end, the ones who reacted were Sword Demon, who had some understanding of its speed, and 100 Lives Jingluan, who was only second to Gu Fei. The two of them pincer attacked from both sides to intercept the misty assassin. The Sword Ghost activated Swift Steps, which was much faster than the 100 Reincarnations Jingluan, but he failed to block the misty assassin. On the other hand, the 100 Reincarnations Jingluan stabbed forward with a horse-riding meteor. His speed was inferior to the Sword Ghost's, but it hit the misty assassin's head. Sword Demon was competing with the Fog Assassin in terms of speed. He wanted to reach the position one step ahead of it, but he failed. 100 Lives Jingluan, on the other hand, made an estimation. He instantly judged the speed of the enemy and himself, rushed to the point of intersection, and accurately punched the fog assassin. 100 Lives Jingluan's attack was very different from Gu Fei's. Gu Fei was a mage. He was weak, so he mainly relied on spells to deal damage. On the other hand, 100 Era strategist's attacks were purely physical and contained strength. Therefore, when he hit the mist assassin, not only did he deal damage, but he also affected the mist assassin's body. The mist assassin staggered and fell to the side. On the other side, Sword Demon saw this opportunity. He immediately used swift steps to rush behind the fog assassin and ruthlessly stabbed it in the back. On the other side, Yutian Shinming also seized the opportunity and sniped at the fog assassin's back. After all, they were all experts, and when such an obvious opportunity presented itself, no one would miss it. Even Zhang Wushang wanted to charge forward, but he was just a little too far away, and it was impossible for him to be faster than Imperial Divine Cry's snipe. So when he took 2 steps forward, the misty assassin had already darted forward, charging into the mist and hiding again. This was the fog assassin's style. Those who had seen it before were already used to it. Now that they had successfully attacked the haze assassin, they were filled with confidence. If the haze assassin rushed out, and everyone could see it, but couldn't attack it, then there was no point in dreaming about this boss. At the same time, Sword Demon and the other experts in the game were thinking, if it wasn't for Gu Fei or 100 Lives Jingluan, there was no way they could defeat the fog assassin. Everyone, be careful. Gu Fei had already recovered after receiving a reply from Han family young master. He stood up from the ground and ate some fruits as he spoke. Everyone quickly moved closer to the center, forming a formation that was no different from Jian Nan and the others. The only difference was that Gu Fei, who was eating fruits, was surrounded by everyone. He was the target of the fog assassin's aggro. Everyone wanted to see what the fog assassin would do when Gu Fei was completely protected. Hey, what should I do? At this time, his hands went soft and he stood to the side alone. I told you to hurry back. Han family young master said without turning his head. Chapter 442. Everyone nervously observed the changes in their surroundings. The air seemed to be filled with the pressure of a super powerful boss. Everyone stopped talking, and the surroundings became quiet. The only sound was, crunch, crunch. Everyone couldn't help but look at Gu Fei, who was in the middle of the circle. He was seriously eating an apple. It's just eating an apple. Can you lower your voice? Han family young master looked at him in disdain. It's not that I'm loud, it's just that it's too quiet, Gu Fei said. Everything in the game was simulated. Apples were naturally simulated to the best taste. It was fragrant, sweet, and crisp. It was impossible to take a bite without making a sound. However, it was too quiet now. Even the sound of Gu Fei grinding the apple in his mouth could be heard clearly. Everyone couldn't hold it in anymore. Yutian Shinming was the first to attack. He also took out an apple and chewed on it loudly. He was followed by unscathed in battle. He ate even louder than the other two. It was unknown if it was because of the warrior's greater strength. Han family young master took out a bottle of wine. Sword Demon still maintained his silent style. He took a piece of bread and stuffed it into his mouth without batting an eyelid. Hey, what are you guys doing? Brother, you panicked. These people were too careless in the face of a great enemy. Finally, Brother Yu glanced at 100 Lives Jingluan beside him. At least he didn't eat anything. He felt a little comforted. However, after only 2 seconds, 100 Lives Jingluan took out a skewer of grilled fish from his pocket. Gu Fei had recommended it to him when he got off the ship in Waterside City. He only got the chance when he was about to leave. If it wasn't for these 2 skewers of fish, he wouldn't have been short of money to pay for the ship. He took a little longer to take it out. It was only because he wasn't as familiar with taking things out of his pocket as the others. Brother Yu was very envious of Gu Fei. He also wanted to stand in the middle of the circle. It was really safe there. However, just 5 seconds after the thought appeared in his mind, Brother Yu began to feel lucky that he was not in the middle of the circle. As Yutian Shinming shouted, everyone immediately threw away the things in their hands and looked in the direction where Yutian Shinming was looking, except for Bai Jingluan. He put the grilled fish back into his pocket, but he did not pull his hand out for a long time. "It's coming," Brother Yu anxiously reminded him. "That's good. We haven't found the food compartment yet," Encyclopedic Eminence said. In front of the enemy, everyone raised their eyebrows. This person's pocket was divided into different areas? What a character! The misty assassin had already passed through the fog and appeared in front of everyone. However, no one rushed to attack. They were determined to see what the boss would do when the aggro target was completely protected. They wanted to see if there were any flaws that could be exploited, or if there were any loopholes in the system. They soon saw it. When the misty assassin was about 5 meters away from the crowd, it suddenly flew up and went straight above everyone's heads. Immediately after, there was a clear pause in the air. The misty assassin was already upside down in the air, holding a dagger with both hands. "Fuck! Dodge!" No one knew who shouted, but the group of people that had been tightly gathered around Gu Fei dispersed. Almost at the same time, the misty assassin rushed down from the sky. Its speed was even faster than when it was on the ground. However, the pause in the air gave Gu Fei enough time to prepare. This was the problem that Gu Fei had always looked down on when NPCs attacked. Perhaps the designer only thought that this kind of sudden stop and rush were very rhythmic, and that it would stir up the emotions of the audience. But for a fighting expert like Gu Fei, the Haze Assassin's specialty was its speed. If the rhythm was increased, no one would be able to stop it. But in the end, it was such a failure. He didn't know if the designer didn't understand, or if it was a deliberate flaw. In any case, the misty assassin had already rushed down. At first, those guys were still protecting Gu Fei, but now they had all retreated, leaving the misty assassin to Gu Fei alone. They were waiting for an opportunity to attack. Gu Fei pushed his sword with both hands and used his old method to block the misty assassin's attack. Unexpectedly, the impact this time was much bigger than any of the previous ones. Gu Fei originally thought that since he was going up from the ground, he wouldn't be able to fly again. However, he didn't think that he wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure. Both of his arms bent, and the sword and dagger directly rushed towards his head. Gu Fei immediately bent his legs and took the initiative to flip to the ground. This was to increase the area of impact and reduce the pressure to resist the misty assassin's killing move. After falling to the ground, Gu Fei was able to withstand the attack, but it wasn't easy. At this time, his whole body was being suppressed by the attack, and he felt like he was about to spasm. Gu Fei's mouth couldn't help but tremble, and the apple in his mouth immediately fell out. In the end, this falling apple was like a signal, and the guys who had spread out suddenly surrounded him and attacked. Knives, swords, daggers, fists, all of them smashed onto the misty assassin's body. Everyone's eyes turned red, and it was actually a blood mist that spread out from a person's body. What surprised everyone even more was that this blood mist was actually sprayed out from Gu Fei's body. At this time, the misty assassin didn't even need to land, and had already flashed past everyone's heads, flying into the mist. The few of them didn't care about the boss anymore, and only looked at Gu Fei who was lying at their feet. From his face, they could see spots of blood that looked like he had been pricked by needles. Han family young master replied to him while asking, "How are you?" "I'm fine." Gu Fei crawled up from the ground. Everyone was shocked. His injuries were so strange and terrifying, but why did he look like he was fine? Han family young master looked at the spots on his face. "For your blood to spurt out like this, you received the force very evenly." The misty assassin's attack from above was really too strong. Although Gu Fei thought of a way to block it, just the momentum alone was enough to cause damage to him. When he was suppressed by the misty assassin's attack, Gu Fei's health had already started to drop. If it wasn't for Han family young master's 2 timely heals, he would have already died. This attack didn't directly hit his body, but rather the pressure spread throughout his entire body, resulting in the strange scene of his entire body exploding with blood without any obvious wounds. Even now, everyone still didn't believe that nothing had happened to Gu Fei after this attack. "I'm really fine," Gu Fei said as he used his hand to wipe away a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. "Wow, you're still saying you're fine even after spitting out blood," everyone exclaimed. "It's just a game. That's just a sign of your health dropping, it's nothing to be surprised about," Gu Fei said. "Fuck. You think it's your turn to teach us a lesson?" The experts all looked at this beginner in disdain. "But, let's not use this method of baiting the enemy," Gu Fei said. He looked fine on the surface, but the attack just now had caused him a lot of pain, and he was too embarrassed to express it. After this attack, his injuries could be said to be all over his body. The wounds were barely there, so it didn't hurt at all. With the help of the simulation system, the pain was gone. In the end, all that was left was an itch. Every part of his body that had just oozed blood felt like there were tiny insects crawling around. Gu Fei used an extremely strong endurance to not immediately scratch his ears and cheeks in front of everyone. He knew that as long as his health recovered, the symptoms would definitely disappear, so he endured it again and again, calmly talking to everyone. But Gu Fei definitely didn't want to suffer this kind of crime again, so he firmly refused to tempt the Misty Assassin into making this kind of direct attack. Spread out, don't surround me," Gu Fei shooed everyone away. "Then we'll continue to have you bait the boss and we'll wait for an opportunity to attack from the side," Han family young master said. This was originally their plan from the start. "Is this really okay?" Yutian Shinming asked. "Let's try a few more rounds, and I'll be able to confirm my deduction," Han family young master said. "What?" Han family young master didn't say anything, and only nodded his head along with brother Yu. "It's coming." Without waiting for Yutian Shinming to continue asking, Sword Demon suddenly shouted. Although everyone didn't surround the boss in a 360-degree formation, it looked like they were standing in a random direction. At this time, Sword Demon, whose back was facing Gu Fei, was the first to see the Misty Assassin coming out of the fog. Its target was naturally the one with his back facing him, Gu Fei. "It's always like this, how annoying." At this time, Gu Fei was already completely familiar with the Misty Assassin's attack patterns. It was clear that the system didn't have the ability to automatically derive new moves and techniques. There were only a few of them, and Gu Fei was already familiar with them. He held his sword horizontally in front of his chest to block. The swords clashed. When the swords clashed, the Misty Assassin's body would always pause for a moment. This was also the opportunity that the surrounding people were waiting for. It didn't matter if they could hit or not, they would attack first. In the end, the Misty Assassin's pause was too short. Gu Fei was sent flying after receiving this attack, and the Misty Assassin immediately chased after him. Everyone's attacks missed, including 100 Lives Strategist's fist. This time, the distance was a bit too far, and he didn't even have the time to finish the journey. Yutian Shinming's tracking arrow caught the Misty Assassin, but he quickly discovered that the tracking arrow wasn't as fast as the boss. Just like Gu Fei and Misty Assassin's 1v1 duel, the two's positions would quickly change as soon as they clashed. Everyone hurriedly rushed in the direction where the two disappeared. When they arrived, the Misty Assassin was already gone. They saw Gu Fei crawling up from the ground again, and smiled at everyone. "It won't be like this every time." The Misty Assassin had a few attack patterns, and some of them couldn't be found, such as just now. There were also other times when there were opportunities, and this was the real opportunity that everyone was waiting for. Yes. Everyone nodded. The harder the boss was to deal with, the more valuable it was. Everyone was very patient, waiting for the opportunity to appear. At the same time, the self-disciplined game worker, Comrade Yi Xiaowu, had nothing to do, so he came to the monitoring group to take a stroll. However, he saw a group of people gathered in front of a certain screen. Seeing him come in, someone immediately called out, "Chairman Yi, come look, someone is killing a level 60 boss." A level 60 boss? Which one? Yi Xiaowu heard this and became excited. The Misty Assassin. Wow, how many people are killing it? How many have died? Yi Xiaowu hurriedly came over to grab a seat. "It's been a while, and it seems like no one has died yet," replied his colleague in the monitoring group. "How is that possible?" Yi Xiaowu was shocked. Chapter 443. Level 60 bosses were already the strongest bosses that could be raised in the wild. Bosses that were stronger than this level could only be bosses that appeared in quests or storylines. These types of bosses were said to be more intelligent, stronger, and had better items. However, their whereabouts were also legends. That was something that had to be triggered. Of course, they were much rarer than wild bosses. As for wild bosses, the parallel world didn't want people to form parties to kill them every day, so their whereabouts were set to be very erratic. In other words, bosses of different levels wouldn't stay in their own leveling area like other monsters. They would wander around. So, some people had a question. What should they do if a high-level boss ran into a leveling area for low-level players? In the end, they were mercilessly laughed at by the system. What should they do? Just avoid it. It's just wandering around, it'll leave after a while. There was a legend in the game. At the beginning of the game, when the players' levels were still very low, there was once a high-level boss that wandered around and finally wandered around the main city gate. Countless players didn't know what it was and died tragically at its hands. Later, when they came to their senses and wanted to avoid it, the boss actually wobbled into the city. The players panicked and thought that it was going to be a massacre, but in the end, 2 guards who were usually at the corner of the city gate acted and killed the boss in 2 or 3 moves. This legend made the players understand 2 things. First, the system guards were very, very strong. They were conservatively estimated to be the highest boss level, so they couldn't be underestimated. Second, the boss that died at the hands of the guards actually dropped, and it was quite a beautiful drop, causing countless people to fight over it. As for who took the items that dropped, no one knew. In any case, once there was a top expert in this main city, they would be suspected by the whole city. Then, they would always be hit with bricks, shot in the back, and stabbed in the back. Because of this, there were countless PK bloodshed. In the end, the main city successfully developed a violent and impulsive culture. This legendary main city was called Moonlit City. Then, one day, an unknown brat suddenly formed a group and quickly developed it into the strongest guild in Moonlit Night City, bullying all the players to the point where they didn't dare to say anything. Everyone suddenly realized that this guy, who had been hiding his strength all this time and suddenly led everyone to Moonlit Night City, was the one who had really hit the jackpot when the guards at the city gates slaughtered the boss. This lucky person was called Silvermoon. A mere high-level boss had accidentally wandered into the city gate, yet it had brought so much trouble to the entire city. It was hard to say whether the system's wandering setting was good or bad. However, after this incident, no high-level bosses appeared at the city gates again. Later on, the game officials accepted the players' suggestions and made the bosses stop moving around too quickly. At the very least, they would have to rest from time to time. Later, there were players who praised the boss in the parallel world. "You are that lone wolf, forever wandering alone in the boundless wilderness of the leveling area." The bosses in the parallel world were so unpredictable, but this Haze Assassin was an exception, because its background was that of a lost person. The common phenomenon of lost people was that they would always return to the starting point, and this also happened to this Haze Assassin. Although it wasn't as absolute as going around in circles, at the very least, its movement speed was very slow. That was why after being discovered by Soft Hands, it was able to find it in such a short period of time and even bump into it. "Move over, let me see." There were quite a lot of people watching the boss fight, and Yi Xiaowu tried his best to squeeze into the front row. In their monitoring screen, the fog of Xia Fog City had been directly eliminated, and the camera could freely zoom in and out. At this time, in order to see the whole picture, Yi Xiaowu could clearly see the haze assassin quietly walking in the fog, and not far away from it, there was a group of players on full alert. Who is the aggro? Yi Xiaowu threw out this question. As a designer, he knew the biggest characteristic of the haze assassin. Apart from being a lost person, there was also its special aggro system. The haze assassin's aggro range was extremely large, and more importantly, after it identified a target, the aggro system would stop calculating. In other words, before the target died, the haze assassin's aggro target wouldn't change for any reason. This also meant that the aggro couldn't be eliminated. Can the aggro really not be eliminated? The monitoring group's colleagues also knew the characteristics of the haze assassin, and when they saw the designer, Yi Xiaowu, they immediately threw out this question to confirm. There are only two ways: kill the haze assassin, or log off. Yi Xiaowu replied. Everyone was silent. This was the same as not being able to be eliminated. Creating such a special aggro system. In view of the fact that most bosses in the game were played with tanky HP classes pulling monsters and offensive classes dealing damage, Yi Xiaowu and his colleagues deliberately created this type of boss. You want to draw aggro? Fine, no need to trouble you. Once our haze assassin decides on a target, you can't change it even if you want to. You want to focus the aggro on your shield character? Then I'm sorry, our haze assassin can only determine its own target. Random attacks or aggro-generating skills are all useless against it. This was an extremely cheap design. Yi Xiaowu and his colleagues proudly called the haze assassin's aggro system the assassin's calm. As for how players should fight with this kind of design, even they didn't think about it. Making things difficult for players seemed to be where this group of people found fun. So when he heard that someone wanted to kill the haze assassin, Yi Xiaowu was very excited. But when he heard that it had already been a while and no one had died, he was very surprised. At this moment, someone pointed out the aggro-attracting player on the screen. It's this person. The screen was quite far away, so Yi Xiaowu could only see that it was a mage wearing a black robe. His face couldn't be seen clearly. But at this moment, his heart thumped. Could it be him? Yi Xiaowu said as he zoomed in. Hey hey hey. Everyone was unhappy. This kind of activity needed to look at the whole picture. What was the point of zooming in to look at someone? He didn't need to get too close, but it was enough for Yi Xiaowu to recognize this person. It's really him. Yi Xiaowu felt like crying. This mage is very skilled. He can block the boss's attack every time, a colleague of the monitoring group said. This person was obviously a new transfer. He actually didn't know the story between Yi Xiaowu and this mage. Many colleagues in the monitoring group knew about this story. This mage had made Yi Xiaowu, the designer, angry many times. It's attacking. The new colleague suddenly shouted. On the screen, the haze assassin slowly circled around the player's circle and suddenly pounced. Everyone knew that the target was the mage. Everyone just wanted to see how he would deal with it. Needless to say, the new colleague was very excited. Ha, look, he blocked it again. Everyone was silent. Some people stole glances at Yi Xiaowu's expression. Some people even wished that this was in the game. Hurry up and privately message this new colleague. Don't act like a fan of this mage. Take care of comrade Yi Xiaowu's emotions first. But after blocking it again and again, it seems like it's only these few moves. There's nothing new. The new colleague said. This battle with the haze assassin was discovered by him at the beginning. He was immediately attracted by Gu Fei's endless ways to deal with the boss. He had been looking forward to seeing something new, but until now, there hadn't been anything new. I think it's not that he doesn't have any new moves. It's just that the boss only has these few ways to attack. Naturally, he just has to use the same way to deal with it, said another colleague. He was obviously a newcomer. He didn't even know Yi Xiaowu. He even tried to get close to this strange colleague who had squeezed into the front row. Don't you think so? Hey, I'm Triple X. I've only been here for 3 days. Why haven't I seen you before? All the colleagues silently thought of the famous line in the Fist of the North Star, "You're already dead." Yi Xiaowu's expression was indeed very unhappy. The leader of the monitoring group hurriedly made arrangements. "Xiao Lu, go over there and turn on a computer for Boss Yi. Lock the screen here and let him observe this boss battle." Perfect the settings. Yi Xiaowu often came to the monitoring group with excuses, and everyone was familiar with using them. Yi Xiaowu went to the individual seat. Behind him, a newcomer asked, "Boss Yi?" "Which Boss Yi?" Back in the game, in the wave of attacks from the Haze assassin just now, only 100 Lives strategist accurately hit the target. However, Sword Demon and the others had the opportunity to fight the boss directly. They were getting more and more used to it and had improved a lot compared to before. However, the important thing was that Han family young master and brother Yu were muttering and nodding at the side. In this round of confrontation, Gu Fei didn't take much damage. However, he still cast a wave of healing skills. He even cast it on everyone, which made everyone a little confused. Han family young master explained to everyone, "It seems like I guessed correctly. This boss's aggro won't be attracted." "What do you mean?" All this time, Qianli has only attacked once. Although they've been fighting for so long, the boss's aggro shouldn't be that high. Moreover, I've repeatedly used healing skills in front of it. At this time, any monster's aggro should be directed towards me. Therefore, I believe that this boss has a special aggro system. Right now, it has locked onto Qianli as its aggro target. Han family young master said. "Is that so? Could it be that your healing skills haven't generated enough aggro?" Unscathed in battle said. "Look." This time, it was Brother Yu who spoke. He raised his little notebook and pointed at it. The priest's healing skill should be XX. Gongzi has healed XX times. Every time, I have a rough record of the distance between him and the boss. According to the formula XXXXX, the aggro that Gongzi has generated should be XXX. As for Qianli, do you guys understand? While Brother Yu was explaining, the Haze assassin had already attacked twice. Counting these 2 times, alright. Unscathed in battle raised his hand to stop him from continuing. "We don't understand, but we believe you. But if you explain to us like this again, I'll beat you up." "I'll help beat you up," Yu Tian Shinming added. Chapter 444. After thoroughly understanding the Misty Assassin's characteristics, the veterans didn't need to make any more arrangements. They already knew how to fight. Frankly speaking, it was still the tank class pulling aggro while the others madly dealt damage. The only difference was that the character they were using to pull aggro shouldn't be a tank, but because of his outstanding skills, he wasn't a tank, but he was better than a tank. The experts ganged up on the Misty Assassin as tears streamed down their faces. He could even be a meat shield. Was there anything that Gu Fei couldn't do? In the past, Gu Fei's invincibility in PvP was largely due to his 2 pieces of equipment. Everyone in the child elite group knew about these 2 pieces of equipment. Sometimes, everyone thought that if they had these 2 pieces of equipment, they wouldn't necessarily be worse than Gu Fei. Sometimes, they might even be better. However, pulling aggro was a special type of tank. If they didn't choose a specific class, then they definitely wouldn't be able to do it. No matter how skilled Sword Demon was, using a thief to pull aggro wasn't something he could handle. However, this was something Gu Fei could do with a mage. While everyone was feeling dejected, the young master of the Han family once again spoke in a condescending tone. He pointed at Gu Fei and said, "Not bad. You can finally cooperate with us. You're not useless in this team anymore." "That's right." Everyone looked at the Han family young master in astonishment. They thought to themselves, you can even say such shameless words. It seems like you're also a guy with no limits. Gu Fei turned a deaf ear to them. He was completely focused on defending against the misty assassin's attacks. How could he have the time to pay attention to these things? Now, a bunch of people had come to help him, but in reality, the situation was no different from before. The boss was still being fought by him alone, and in order to create opportunities for these people to attack, Gu Fei was not as efficient as before. Sometimes, he had to slow down and take a few blows with the boss. This way, the risk was greater, and the difficulty was higher. It was already difficult to concentrate, so how could he have the mood to listen to the nonsense beside him? In front of the monitor screen, Yi Xiaowu's right hand was tightly gripping the mouse, and his left hand was clenched into a fist. Whenever the misty assassin attacked, his left hand would immediately clench, and his mouth was constantly muttering, "Keep it up, keep it up. Kill him. Kill him." Yi Xiaowu kept encouraging the haze assassin, but he was disappointed every time. The various attack patterns and methods they had designed for the haze assassin were all seen through by Gu Fei, and he became more and more skillful with each move. Yi Xiaowu could not make sense of the surrounding players' actions. These players were simply looking for an opportunity to attack the boss. They didn't seem to be cooperating at all. This wasn't the usual way of fighting a boss. According to common sense, Gu Fei was currently the strongest damage dealer in the game. At this time, they should be thinking of ways to get someone else to attract aggro and replace Gu Fei. But looking at their disorderly attacks, it seemed like they weren't doing such a precise thing at all. Could it be? Yi Xiaowu watched a few more rounds, and finally realized something. Who said they weren't cooperating? The mage attracted aggro, and the others dealt damage. This was their cooperation. Moreover, looking at their unrestrained attacks, it was extremely easy to disrupt aggro, which was a big taboo when fighting a boss. But now, they naturally had their reasons for doing so. That was, they had already seen through the haze assassin's special aggro system. They knew that no matter what they did, the boss' attention wouldn't be on them, so they were so unrestrained. If they saw through it, then so be it. It wasn't a big deal. The one who was too much was the mage. A mere level 41 character actually single-handedly resisted the level 60 haze assassin's attack. Did they even care about the rules of the game? Yi Xiaowu was very depressed. The monitoring group could check all kinds of data in the game at any time. Before Yi Xiaowu locked onto the screen, he had drawn the haze assassin's HP. It had already been consumed by 2/3. The haze assassin had the lowest HP among the bosses. Such a difficult-to-capture speed-type profession, and designing it into a tank would definitely incur the wrath of the heavens. Yi Xiaowu and his colleagues didn't dare to go too far. But seeing such a meticulously planned boss about to be defeated by the other party, Yi Xiaowu was very unwilling. If it was just a group of normal players, Yi Xiaowu would also be full of praise for them. But now, there was Gu Fei involved. In his eyes, Gu Fei was completely a bug. If it was a bug, it should be eliminated. This was an iron rule as a programmer. If a bug was allowed to exist, it would inevitably create an even bigger bug. For example, he had completed the top-level quest chain at level 30. This was a big bug. And now, this guy was going to create an even bigger bug. If a level 60 boss dropped equipment, then it had to be around level 60. If it was an exquisite item, then it would practically be another night streamer sword or moonlight robe. At this moment, Yi Xiaowu was very conflicted. Gu Fei was a bug, but he was also a normal player. He had never used any loopholes in the game to gain benefits. He wanted to eliminate the bug, but he definitely didn't want to deprive a normal player of the right to play the game. Yi Xiaowu's gaze involuntarily swept over the haze assassin's HP. After a few more rounds, the haze assassin's HP dropped again. Apart from this mage, none of the people around him were weak. They were also becoming more and more adept at dealing with the haze assassin. As long as the mage didn't make any mistakes, killing the boss was only a matter of time. It definitely couldn't be like this. Yi Xiaowu suddenly made up his mind. Since he couldn't eliminate the bug, he could at least prevent it from further expanding, right? Thinking of this, Yi Xiaowu, who had been in a constant state of agitation, calmed down. The haze assassin still had 1/3 of its HP left. What else could he do in this 1/3? Yi Xiaowu paid attention to everything he could use. The monitoring room's computer, the monitoring room's data, the monitoring room's authority. The monitoring group was called monitoring, but in reality, a part of the monitoring work was automatically carried out by the computer. It was to analyze whether the data in the game was operating normally. If there were any abnormalities, the alarm would be automatically issued. In addition, it was to receive feedback from the in-game players to see if there were any inappropriate areas. This part of the work was usually handled by the online GM. The staff members who actually sat in the monitoring group's office could actually be said to be the emergency response team in the event of an unexpected incident. They were the team that would immediately discover some problems and solve them as quickly as possible. For example, the Moonlit Night City incident. In reality, after the monitoring group received the news, they immediately controlled the city gate guards to attack the boss. At that time, they also made changes to the data of the 2 city gate guards. Otherwise, even if they were also boss level, there was no way they could defeat the other boss in 2 or 3 hits. It was important to know that the most outstanding data of a boss was always its HP. What kind of terrifying attack power was it to be able to kill a boss in 2 or 3 hits? This kind of terrifying attack power would definitely be able to instantly kill any player. This was an existence that far surpassed the existence of an ordinary boss. However, at that time, the monitoring group had just started working. They didn't have much experience, so they didn't deal with this matter perfectly. The boss actually dropped equipment. The perfect way to deal with it was to reduce the drop rate of this boss and not drop anything. That way, it would be as if nothing had happened. After that, the monitoring group would report this problem to the operation planning department that Yi Xiaowu belonged to. They would make a complete correction and then add a patch in the maintenance update. For example, the situation where no boss wandered into the main city was the result of Yi Xiaowu's correction. On the monitoring group's side, it was equivalent to having a modifier for a standalone game. All the data in the game was stored on the server, and the server was naturally controlled by the game company. To them, online games were naturally standalone games, so they naturally had this kind of modifier tool. Of course, this tool was limited to the monitoring group's discretion when there was an abnormal situation. No other department had this right. Yi Xiaowu knew that every computer in the monitoring group was equipped with this modifier. He wasn't unfamiliar with this modifier at all. It was something that he had designed and manufactured. At that moment, Yi Xiaowu secretly glanced at his colleagues in the monitoring group. Those who were watching the boss were still watching with great interest. Those who weren't watching were busy with their own things, so no one noticed him. When he turned his head, Yi Xiaowu realized that his hand had moved the mouse to the modifier program. He gritted his teeth and fiercely double-clicked it. The modifier was on the monitoring system's whitelist. No matter what kind of modification was made, it wouldn't be reported to the police. However, modifications made using the modifier did not have a save function. Instant modifications were effective immediately. Once the modifier was closed, it would be restored immediately. At that moment, of course, Yi Xiaowu didn't dare to keep the modifier on. If any of his colleagues glanced at it, he would be done for. Using the modifier without any reason was an extremely serious violation of the rules. It was a shady business that could directly get him fired. Moreover, he wasn't even a member of the monitoring group. However, Yi Xiaowu had already thought of how to deal with this. At that moment, he started the modifier and a window to log in and obtain permissions appeared. Yi Xiaowu didn't have the permissions, but this wasn't a problem for him. Don't forget that he was the one who had created the modifier from the beginning. After knocking on another writing board, Yi Xiaowu pretended to be calm as he lightly tapped on the keyboard. Not long after, he finished writing a program, saved, and ran. The permissions window was bypassed. Entering the modifier, Yi Xiaowu quickly made a move. He changed the conditions for the boss to go berserk. Every boss had a berserk state. The conditions to trigger it were different. Some would go berserk when their HP reached a certain level, some would go berserk after receiving a certain amount of damage, and some would go berserk whenever they wanted. The harder the berserk conditions were to be triggered, the more powerful the berserk state would be. The berserk conditions for Hei's assassin were on the higher side. Yi Xiaowu looked at the way Gu Fei and the others were fighting and knew that it was impossible to trigger the berserk state. So, Yi Xiaowu helped them. He temporarily set the berserk condition for Hei's assassin to be attacked. After confirming, the condition would take effect immediately, but he couldn't turn off the modifier. This was the most tense moment. Yi Xiaowu didn't look at the screen and only stared at the others around him. Suddenly, he heard the onlookers exclaim, "Ah! The boss is going berserk." Yi Xiaowu turned his head and quickly turned off the modifier. This was what he was proud of. When the modifier was turned off, everything returned to normal. However, the boss berserk state was produced after the conditions were met. It wouldn't be eliminated just because the conditions were changed. At that moment, Hei's assassin was already in the berserk state. Butterfly Knot, Comrade Yi Xiaowu, who has been silent for a long time, has finally made his move. Chapter 445. There shouldn't be a problem with enraged mode, right? Yi Xiaowu felt inexplicably uneasy. He had wanted to change the drop rate of the boss right before the Hei's assassin's HP was about to be depleted, but he was worried that someone would be by his side at that time. Opportunity didn't wait for anyone. Yi Xiaowu had to seize the moment when no one was paying attention, but he didn't dare to open the modifier. In the end, he chose to change the enraged mode's condition. No one should be able to detect it. Yi Xiaowu was quite sure. The monitoring team was only there to solve the problem after receiving the alarm. They weren't familiar with the game's settings. Right now, it was just an enraged mode. This wasn't an exaggeration, so it shouldn't raise any suspicions. Yi Xiaowu thought while sneaking glances at the onlookers. Not only did the boss enraged mode not raise any suspicions, it was like a shot of adrenaline, making them even more excited. Even the onlookers couldn't help but sneak a few glances. Yi Xiaowu felt like he was a director, successfully creating a climax in a drama. The boss had already entered enraged mode. The onlookers knew, but Gu Fei and the others in the game didn't know. The Hei's assassin's enraged mode was activated in the wave of attacks just now, but it didn't change its style. The Hei's assassin still quickly disappeared into the fog after the attack. In order to let the players know that the boss was about to enter enraged mode, there would usually be a change process. At this time, the Hei's assassin's body had already begun to change. Its skin turned red, its eyes bloodshot, and its hair stood up. Because of the environment of Xiaowu City and the characteristics of the Hei's assassin, Gu Fei and the others outside were still in the dark. When the Hei's assassin appeared again, it was still behind Gu Fei. This time, Brother Yu was the first to see it, so he immediately shouted a warning. Gu Fei calmly turned around, but found that the boss was already in front of him. It wasn't just him, the others were also shocked by the boss's sudden speed. But at least they weren't directly threatened, so they still had a chance to adjust. Gu Fei, who was in the middle of the boss attack, turned around and saw that the boss was right in front of him. The boss's red eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. The shocked Gu Fei wanted to use his sword to block the attack, but it was already too late. In a hurry, he could only use his left hand to block the attack. His aim was very accurate. He had managed to grab the Misty Assassin's wrist, but how could that stop the Misty Assassin's charge? The Misty Assassin continued to charge forward, and Gu Fei was thrown into the air like a kite, spinning in the air. On the other hand, the misty assassin elegantly drifted and turned 180 degrees. With one hand on the ground and the other holding a dagger, he swooped down like a cheetah waiting for an opportunity to pounce on its prey. Skin color, eyes, hairstyle. These changes were too obvious. Anyone could see it at a glance. Coupled with the sudden increase in the boss' speed and impact, the experienced players were already screaming, "Berserk!" Berserk was a common occurrence in the game, so it wasn't worth making a fuss about. But the problem was that the Misty Assassin was already hard to deal with, and now that it had activated its Berserk state, the situation suddenly became serious. At this moment, Gu Fei spun in the air and fell heavily to the ground. With his skills, even if he lost his balance, he would still be able to make some adjustments. Even if he had to fall to the ground, he would still be able to get up in the best position. But right now, Gu Fei had completely fallen, and didn't look like he could immediately get up and counterattack. Clearly, this attack had heavily injured him, and the system had forcefully restricted his movements. This attack's damage was shocking, and Gu Fei's life was hanging by a thread. If it had been a normal magician, they would have been dead by now. Gu Fei had the protection of Wind Chaser, which allowed him to neutralize some of the attack with his hand. That was why he was not killed on the spot. However, he was still heavily injured. He was lying on the ground. His mind was 100% clear, but his body could not move. "How's Chinli?" Someone shouted from the side. Han family young master disdainfully said, "You can tell just by looking at him. Do you even need to ask?" After saying this, he waved his staff. This time, it wasn't a healing skill. Healing was a skill that replenished HP, and right now, Gu Fei was heavily injured. This was a debuff like stunned, weakened, and wounded, which required special potions or skills to dispel. Otherwise, even eating food or healing from a priest wouldn't be able to restore HP. Right now, Han family young master was using this type of skill, a level 40 light priest skill, heal. This skill was a continuous effect skill. After chanting, Han family young master's staff would continuously flash with light, and Gu Fei's entire body would also be enveloped by this light. Only when the light faded would Gu Fei completely return to normal. However, at this time, the boss clearly didn't intend to give him the chance to heal Gu Fei. After making a 180-degree turn, it immediately used the same attack as before and rushed forward again. "Ah!" Unscathed in battle roared, and used charge to collide with the Misty Assassin. Although these experts didn't have the skills of a professional like Kung Fu, other aspects such as awareness and experience were first class. As soon as they saw that Gu Fei was knocked down, they knew that he needed cover, and at this time, they all stood in front of Gu Fei. Unscathed in battle saw that Gu Fei didn't die after being hit by the boss, and guessed that he wouldn't be instantly killed, so he bravely went to fight the boss head-on. He didn't think that he could kill the boss in one hit, he just wanted to buy some time for Han family young master to heal Gu Fei. In their hearts, everyone knew who the key person to kill the boss was. Although the Misty Assassin was a boss, his body was extremely small. At this time, even if he was in a berserk state, his muscles wouldn't expand. Compared to the heavily armed Unscathed in battle, he was at least 2 sizes smaller. Unscathed in battle held a great sword in both hands, and crossed it in front of him. The Misty Assassin only held a slender dagger in his hand. When the two sides collided, the sound of the collision shook the sky. At this time, even at this time, Unscathed in battle didn't forget to curse. At this time, his huge body had been thrown into the sky, but in the air, he didn't spin as beautifully as Gu Fei. He was only lifted up, and then fell to the ground. The dust that was kicked up was a lot heavier than the dust that was kicked up by Gu Fei, but he didn't enter into a heavily injured state. First of all, the warrior's HP growth was high, and his HP was abundant. Secondly, he was wearing heavy armor, so his defense was much higher than a mage's. Finally, Unscathed in battle used the skill charge, which was many times stronger than Gu Fei's claw. Because of these three reasons, although he was also hit and fell to the ground, the damage he received was actually less than Gu Fei's, and he didn't enter into a heavily injured state. If Gu Fei was in his position, he might have been able to stand steadily after falling. Unscathed in battle's charge became the key to saving Gu Fei. After being hit by the warrior's charge head-on, although the Misty Assassin's advance was not stopped, it was at least a little bit slower. This delay gave 100 Lives Jinglin the opportunity to attack. He grabbed the Misty Assassin with both of his hands, and with a shake of his arms, he threw the Misty Assassin away with a hug throw. When the Misty Assassin was thrown away, he actually kicked 100 Lives Jinglin. If it was any other Grandmaster of Combat, they would definitely be hit. According to the rules, the target who was thrown away with a hug throw would be in a stiff state before landing on the ground, and couldn't move at all. Who would have thought that the Misty Assassin would be unaffected and counterattack? Only 100 Lives Jinglin, who was a professional kung fu practitioner, would not be so careless. The Misty Assassin kicked back, and 100 Lives Jinglin immediately blocked it with his hands. He also knew that the boss kick was not as simple as it seemed, so he also cast a Chi Wave Shield. The Chi Wave Shield was shattered by the Misty Assassin's kick, and 100 Lives Jinglin took a few steps back, and his HP also decreased. However, the Misty Assassin was not able to completely shake off the force of the hug throw, and he was still sent flying. He adjusted his position in the air, and finally landed firmly on the ground. This charge and hug throw finally bought enough time. The Han family young master also boasted that he was a priest with the golden ratio, so his efficiency was much higher than those priests with vitality. Gu Fei had already recovered and stood up. The Misty Assassin moved again, and Gu Fei was ready to receive the attack. However, no one expected that the Misty Assassin would suddenly rush toward Yutian Shinming. All the cover was laid out around Gu Fei, and the boss's behavior of keeping an eye on Gu Fei had already made everyone have no other doubts. Who would have thought that the boss would make such an unexpected move at such a crucial moment? No one had the time to help, and no one had the time to cover. Archers were long-range attackers, and they had the biggest advantage in agility. Their HP was also not bad, but their HP was their biggest weakness, even worse than a mage. Although their defense was higher than a mage's, in front of a level 60 boss, this bit of defense was better than nothing. Moreover, he did not have any close combat skills, and at this moment, Yutian Shinming only had one choice: escape. Escape to buy time for his companions to rescue him. As Yutian Shinming thought so, he turned around and escaped. The rescue indeed came very quickly. Gu Fei waved his sword and chanted, and a wall of electricity had already crossed over to Yutian Shinming's back. However, the Misty Assassin ignored it, and ran head-on into the wall of electricity. There was a Z sound. A human-shaped crack appeared on the wall of electricity. The Misty Assassin's body flashed with electricity, and he continued to sprint forward. In a few steps, he had already caught up, and stabbed. At this moment, Yutian Shinming's escape had become a fatal weakness. The Misty Assassin's body flashed with electricity, and his consciousness had also entered the paralyzed state caused by the electric spell. The characteristic of the paralyzed state was that skills could not be used. If Yutian Shinming had taken this normal attack head-on, he might not have died, but turning around to escape had left him with his vest. Attacks from the back were the characteristics of assassins, and as an assassin boss, it was even more advantageous. In addition to the increased attack power after going berserk, Yutian Shinming was instantly killed by this sword. After a loud roar, the Misty Assassin once again shattered the electricity on his body, and turned around to hide in the fog. The remaining 6 people's faces were more or less at a loss. On the other side, Yi Xiaowu could not help but reveal an evil smile. After going berserk, the Misty Assassin's aggro pattern would be reshuffled. Going berserk and still maintaining the calm of an assassin? Do you think that our designers are idiots? Yi Xiaowu thought. Chapter 446. The assassin's calmness was easy to deal with once the players were familiar with the aggro. Let's use a simple and violent method: lie flat on the ground while the other players piled on top of it like a human pyramid. This way, the haze assassin couldn't attack the players inside. The others weren't its aggro targets, and its aggro couldn't be transferred. Wouldn't it be teased to death by the other players? Of course not. This was the condition of the haze assassin's berserk mode. When the haze assassin couldn't attack its target, it would enter berserk mode. After the haze assassin went berserk, apart from its form, attack, and speed, the hidden change was the way it changed aggro. The new aggro mode was also extreme. It would randomly attack any target within its aggro range without any rules. Even Yi Xiaowu didn't know who its next target would be. After it entered berserk mode, it appeared from the fog and attacked Gu Fei first. It was such a coincidence that everyone became careless and didn't notice the change in the aggro mode. It was only when the Misty Shadow Assassin suddenly kicked 100 lives Jingluan when he used Hug Throw that Misty Shadow Assassin kicked 100 lives Jingluan that the quick-witted young master of the Han family who was familiar with the game instantly realized that something was wrong. If the aggro was always focused on Gu Fei and didn't change due to any other factors, it meant that other than Gu Fei, the boss was just an obedient pet that couldn't fight back. Although it was very fast, the Han family young master felt that the boss's design was stupid. He instantly thought of the dirty moves like the human pyramid, but it was obvious that Gu Fei could deal with the boss as a meat shield, so there was no need to do that. However, when the boss suddenly kicked Baisher Jingluan, he realized that something was wrong. Before he could figure it out, the haze assassin had already killed Yutian Shenming and left arrogantly. What happened? Everyone was shocked. The aggro mode has changed, Han family young master said, don't spread out too much. Everyone immediately focused. Brother Yu frowned and said, how could it be Yutian? If we were to revert to normal hatred, Wushang, 100 Era's strategist, and you should have more hatred than Yutian. I'm afraid it's a random attack mode. Han family young master said. Fuck, there's actually such a lowly person. Everyone cursed. Aggro could be said to be the key to challenging difficult bosses. Who would have thought that this boss's aggro system would change so many times? Now, it even had a random attack mode. This meant that the calculation of aggro was completely useless. No matter how you looked at it, this boss was purposely created to make things difficult for players. Random? What kind of random method is this? Brother Yu was still interested in researching at this time. The Han family young master frowned and said nothing. He's here. This time, it was 100 Era's Grandmaster who spoke. The misty assassin had rushed out from his direction, but no one knew who its target was. So fast. After the misty assassin went berserk, even the time it could hide in the fog was shortened. It didn't take long for it to turn around. After fiercely killing its way out of the fog, it suddenly rose from the ground and swooped down from the sky to attack. Brother Yu, it's you. Gu Fei and 100 Era's Grandmaster shouted at the same time as they rushed forward. Based on the misty assassin's position after it paused in the air, the two had already determined the general direction it was heading towards. It was heading towards Brother Yu. The most inexperienced Brother Yu had become the misty assassin's target. He was so panicked that he almost forgot how to hold his sword. However, this time, everyone was very close to each other. Moreover, the misty assassin's attack in the air was the easiest to deal with in Gu Fei's eyes because it gave people more time to prepare. 100 Era's Grandmaster, who was diagonally in front of Brother Yu, was the fastest and the closest. However, he did not have enough time to completely flash in front of Brother Yu. He almost fell to the ground and stretched out his hands. A chi wave shield that was much larger than before floated above his palms. The chi wave shield's defense and area were directly proportional to the mana consumed. 100 Era's Grandmaster was currently using it to his limit. However, this little bit of hindrance could not stop the misty assassin's attack. The chi wave shield was silently shattered like a piece of tofu. 100 Era's Grandmaster was also sent flying, but he crashed into Brother Yu. Brother Yu staggered backward, and a figure rushed out from behind him with lightning flashing in his hand. Lightning palm. Gu Fei had already condensed the lightning palm in his hand. Taking advantage of the opportunity that 100 Era's Grandmaster had snatched, he directly pressed the lightning palm on the misty assassin's head. Repel it. Gu Fei prayed silently in his heart. The knockback effect of the lightning palm was 100%, but Gu Fei did not know what kind of setting it was when facing a boss that was higher level than him. He only remembered that he had used it when he was fighting against the guards, but the guards did not move an inch. He had pushed the misty assassin before, but that time, he had flashed behind the misty assassin and pushed its back. It was a combination of the lightning palm and the technique of leveraging force. This time, the misty assassin was charging at him head-on, and it was in a berserk state. What would happen? Success. The misty assassin who was pressed on the head by Gu Fei was instantly pushed away by the repulsive force of the lightning palm. However, Gu Fei did not have the time to be happy. The misty assassin was only pushed back 5 meters. Although the knockback effect was effective, it was not very thorough this time. Moreover, the misty assassin seemed to have become more patient after it went berserk. After it retreated, it did not immediately dive back into the fog as everyone expected. Instead, it attacked again, and very lasciviously changed its target. Gongzi! Gu Fei quickly shouted. The misty assassin's target this time was the Han family young master. Gu Fei and 100 Era's strategist could not save him in time. Just as the misty assassin was about to stab him, another dagger stabbed out from the side. It was the sword demon. Only the sword demon could use a dagger. When the weapons collided, even a warrior like unscathed in battle would be sent flying, let alone the sword demon. However, he had already predicted that this would happen, so the moment he was sent flying, he raised his sword and slashed at the boss. It was better than nothing. The misty assassin's attention was not diverted at all, and it was still stubbornly stabbing at the Han family young master. However, at the same time, the white light from the Han family young master's magic staff had already drifted to his body. The Han family young master was inevitably sent flying, but he waved his magic staff in the air again, and the white light shrouded him again. As the Han family young master fell to the ground, everyone stared at him. However, the white light did not disappear from his body. Instead, he stood up and looked at everyone in disdain. Do you think I'll die so easily? Sick, this is too sick. Brother Yu could not understand the meaning of Gu Fei and the others' kung fu, but he could understand the technique used by the Han family young master. It was just that he had grasped the perfect timing to use the regenerate spell. This was because there had to be a process for one's life to be reduced to 0. This process might only be an instant, so fast that one might not even be able to see it with the naked eye. However, the young master of the Han family was able to use this instant to cast the recovery spell. Calculation, intuition, everything was displayed to the extreme in this instant. Even Gu Fei believed that if this guy went to practice kung fu, he would definitely be a genius. The misty assassin retreated after attacking the Han family young master, and everyone had to admit that they were lucky. If there was another attack, no matter who it hit, they would probably be dead. The misty assassin attacked 2 people as soon as it appeared, and it had already caused everyone to be in a mess. However, they did not even have much time to sigh, and quickly regrouped to recover. It came and went so fast. There wasn't much time to recover, said Gu Fei while eating an apple. If this assassin didn't come and go like this, we really wouldn't be able to fight. Unscathed in battle was the one who did not suffer any damage from the previous wave of attacks. That's why it came and went like this. In the end, bosses are for players to fight. Do you really think that the game can't make a boss that can't be fought? Said the Han family young master. But isn't attacking randomly like this a bit too much? Can we still fight it? Said Brother Yu. Sword Demon, did you just slash it? Sword Demon laughed bitterly, just that, and I didn't even use any skills. I don't think I can even break through its defense. Everyone's gaze focused on Gu Fei. Gu Fei had a troubled expression, and sighed, "Don't look at me. If it continues to focus on me, I can try again, but right now its attack target is uncertain, and it's hard to deal with. Are we really going to be wiped out here? Damn, we just got wiped out, karma came so quickly." Unscathed in battle looked up at the sky and sighed, his expression was that of a hero at the end of his road. However, the Han family young master suddenly asked, "Do any of you have friends in Xiaowu City? Even if it's someone you know?" Added the Han family young master before anyone could speak. Strange pupil. Gu Fei suddenly remembered that after he understood the situation from strange pupil, they added each other as friends out of courtesy. Gu Fei even asked her when she would find someone to rob him again, which made strange pupil feel a chill down his spine. Yes. I'll contact her," said the unscathed in battle immediately. He even added strange pupil's sister, Yan Xiaozhu. He quickly opened his friends list and was about to send a message when he suddenly looked at everyone awkwardly. What should I tell her? The Han family young master gave him a disdainful look and said, "Tell her our coordinates, then ask her where the nearest leveling area is, preferably one with a lot of people." The others immediately reacted, "You want to?" The smile on the Han family young master's face was 10 times more sinister than Yi Xiaowu's. "Doesn't it attack randomly?" "Wow, that's so despicable. Can you not always be so despicable?" the others exclaimed. "You can't do that." Gu Fei and 100 Realms Jingluan had already made a clear refusal. Although it was just a game, the two of them did not lose their moral values at all. After all, they had received the most education in this aspect. If they could not even pass this stage, they would not have the chance to learn Kung Fu. The Han family young master glanced at the two of them but did not say anything. He said calmly, "Whatever." The sword demon suddenly said, "Don't you think the boss has been gone for too long this time?" "Yes, it has. Brother, you looked at his notebook. He liked to record everything." The unscathed in battle also raised his head and said to the others, "Strange pupil said that this is the hottest leveling area." Chapter 447. They were now quite a distance away from where they had first encountered the boss. As Gu Fei would often be sent flying when he fought with Misty Assassin, they had no choice but to chase after Gu Fei. Hence, they had unknowingly arrived at this place. This was a leveling area. They had no idea because they did not see any normal monsters or other players. However, strange pupil had replied to them and the boss had not returned. This was obvious. Han family young master laughed coldly, "What does this have to do with me?" No one said anything. When Han family young master asked around for the location of the most popular leveling area, everyone knew what he was planning to do. He wanted to lure the boss to a place like this, even if it cost him his life. Then, there was a high chance that the boss's aggro would fall on someone else, and they could use this opportunity to escape. This was because after the boss went berserk, its aggro would always be strange and abnormal. Just the aggro range alone was extremely exaggerated. Even if Xiaowu City's vision was obstructed, it was still 20 to 30 meters away. This boss could actually hide so that people couldn't see it, and then when it attacked, its aggro range was as large as 30 meters. This was something that had never been heard of before. What was even more ridiculous was that the aggro was generated at random. It ignored the targets that created aggro and went straight for Yutian Shinming, who did not even attack. Yutian Shinming's death was even worse than Do Yi's. When a boss like this went to a place with a lot of players, all players within 30 meters would become its aggro targets. What was even more terrifying was that with the weather conditions in Xia Fog City, no one would be able to sense the danger. Hence, with the boss as the center, it would become a moving black hole that would reduce the level of the players. Which idiot designed such a thing? After the young master of the Han family muttered to himself once again, he brought up the previous suggestion. He did not expect Gu Fei, an encyclopedic strategist, to be so adamant about it. Han family young master did not think much of it. In fact, with their situation at that time, it was already a problem for them to lure the boss away. This was just a tentative suggestion. Who would have thought that these two fellows would have such noble character and unquestionable integrity? They would rather die themselves than let others die to protect them. The Han family young master had no choice but to let it go, but he didn't expect his luck to be so good. They were already in the leveling area. What are you waiting for? Han family young master said. Gu Fei and 100 Era's Jingluan looked at each other and suddenly rushed in the direction where the misty assassin disappeared. Let's go take a look. Both of them knew that their appearance wouldn't change anything, but they felt extremely uncomfortable taking advantage of such an opportunity to escape. Everyone had a moral bottom line in their hearts. When they touched it, they might feel hesitant when they were alone, but when they were together, they had gained mutual determination. Although they could not do anything, at least they could have peace in their hearts. Fuck, are all those who have learned to be so righteous? Han family young master looked down on him. He really did not know where his moral bottom line was. Just from the fact that he could come up with such a vicious plan to sacrifice others to escape, he was definitely far from Gu Fei and the others. On the other hand, Sword Demon was a much more upright person. When he saw Gu Fei and encyclopedic strategist's actions, his blood boiled and he nodded firmly. I'll go take a look as well. Let's go. Han family young master ignored him like he ignored others. He did not frown when he sacrificed others, nor did he hesitate when he sacrificed himself. Brother Yu clenched his little notebook tightly. I'll go take a look too. For so many years, Brother Yu had unwaveringly collected and analyzed information about the game. Was it easy for Brother Yu? His companions were all gone, and now unscathed in battle was leaving alone. Would he have the face to face everyone in the future? Although he felt that it was a pity to give up such an opportunity, he had no choice but to follow him generously. Previously, the misty assassin had identified Gu Fei and actively sought them out. No one knew of its movements when it entered the fog. In short, it was impossible for it to not move, because it never returned from the path it disappeared in. But at this time, they had no other choice but to follow the direction. Along the way, they did not see any traces of the misty assassin, but from time to time, they could hear the screams of players. They immediately chased in the direction of the sound, but the misty assassin was nowhere to be seen. Along the way, they saw players and monsters in the leveling area, but the misty assassin was nowhere to be seen. They asked the players they saw and chased in the direction where it disappeared, but to no avail. This was a true leveling area. There were a lot of players here, and every single one of them had become a springboard for the haze assassin. After killing 2 or 3 people, it would disappear into the fog and move on to the next target. Gu Fei and the others wouldn't even be able to find it unless the haze assassin coincidentally appeared next to them and made them its targets. Chase. They did not have the speed of the misty assassin. Gradually, the screams of the players were getting further and further away from them, and after a while, they had completely disappeared. The misty assassin had abandoned them just like that. They stared at each other, not knowing what to do. It's actually like this. Unscathed in battle found it hard to believe. If we keep killing like this, how long will it take? Gu Fei asked. Its special aggro system seems to only appear after it goes berserk. Maybe after the berserk status disappears, it will be fine. Brother Yu said. The boss berserk status disappears. Sword Demon had played online games for so many years, but he had never seen such a thing. Why not? Han family young master said, after killing all the aggro targets, the boss will naturally get rid of all its status, and its health will return to its original state. Kill all the aggro targets? 100 Generations Jingluan wiped his sweat. This boss aggro targets are randomly generated. Unscathed in battle said. That's why. Han family young master spread out his hands. This is a bug, right? Brother Yu said. That's right, so I've already sent a report to the online GM. Han family young master said. Did the GM reply? Yes. What did it say? Please describe your situation in detail. We will do our best to serve you. The Han family's young master relayed. Fuck, what did you say? This was clearly an automated reply. The boss is massacring the city. Han family young master said. Everyone was speechless. And so brother, you began to report the situation in detail to the GM. His arguments were presented as if he wanted to show off his talent. At this time, Gu Fei's ears suddenly perked up. Listen. What? Ah. There was a scream. The boss is coming again. Everyone said at the same time, but their tones were different. Some were surprised, and some were complaining. Over here. Gu Fei heard the sound and rushed over. The others followed closely. In the fog, they could still see the silhouettes of the players who were focused on leveling up. Gu Fei suddenly had a thought and shouted towards the players who were leveling up, hurry and disperse, a boss is going berserk. Boss? Where? Everyone who heard this had a fiery glow in their eyes. Some of the smarter players looked at Gu Fei with disdain. Ignore him. He's lying to the leveling area. Does he think I haven't seen it before? It's true, it's a very powerful boss. Gu Fei said. How powerful is it? Everyone laughed. Gu Fei really wanted to kill two of them and tell them that it was only that powerful. Of course, he wouldn't do that. Just as he was at his wit's end, Han family young master raised his finger and said, Don't be noisy, listen. Screams and curses could be heard. Did you hear that? This is the boss going berserk. Wherever it goes, it kills. If you're not afraid of death, then just wait here. Han family young master said. There would often be screams in the leveling area. Normally, they wouldn't think much of it, but now that they listened carefully, they felt that it was different from the past. Usually, it was nothing more than getting scratched by a small monster or something. Today, the screams seemed to be especially tragic. It was as if people were usually surrounded and scratched by a group of small monsters. Moreover, there were many curses today, and they were all filled with confusion. It was as if something unreasonable was happening. Then why aren't you guys running? There were still people who were doubtful. Ha! Han family young master laughed, because we're idiots. We didn't run when there was a chance. Instead, we came to die. The other party was startled. He felt that this person's words were weird and he looked like a woman. It was disgusting. Gu Fei knew that this guy was just scolding him in a roundabout way. He laughed in disdain and said sincerely to the group of players, It's true. You guys should leave. Or you can stay and be idiots with us. Han family young master added. Finally, someone wavered. At this time, Gu Fei also felt that this was enough. Was he supposed to go up and hug someone's thigh and beg them not to throw away their lives? Thus, he pointed behind him and said, Run that way. After saying this, he continued forward with the others following closely behind. The leveling players were startled. Suddenly, someone reacted, Fuck, we're really idiots. This person is trying to trick us into leaving so that we won't fight for the boss with him. Everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. Not only did they not prepare to leave, they even packed up their equipment and followed behind the 6 people while cursing. Gu Fei, who had kindly reminded them to leave, became the target of everyone's criticism. All sorts of dirty words were thrown at him. Gu Fei was wronged, but he didn't care. He just continued to walk forward. However, there were some people in this world that if you ignored them, they would take a mile when given an inch. If they were just mocking and criticizing Gu Fei, then it would be fine. However, when the words started to get worse and worse and he started to talk about his elders, this was something that Gu Fei couldn't accept. Thus, he stopped and turned around. He looked at the people behind him and calmly said, If you don't believe me, then forget it. If you want to scold me, then scold me. But don't go overboard with your words. Gu Fei suddenly turned around and replied. Everyone was startled, but they quickly realized that they had the advantage in numbers. One person pointed at him and shouted, "What are you doing? Are you trying to scare us?" "No, I'm just informing you," Gu Fei said. "I'm just scolding you. What do you want?" "Fuck you, teleportation." His eyes flashed and he disappeared before he could finish speaking. Gu Fei sheathed his sword and looked at the others. "Send a message to him." "That's it." Chapter 448. Everyone was silent. Gu Fei attacking out of anger was something that everyone expected, but no one expected the consequences to be so terrifying. "That's dual flame flash." Some people couldn't believe their eyes. No one answered him. Everyone was staring at Gu Fei. From time to time, cries of surprise could be heard from within the thick fog, tugging at their heartstrings. Gu Fei didn't say anything else. He suddenly turned around and left. Everyone stood in place and looked at each other, not knowing what to do. This story tells us that in this sinister world, it's hard for people to believe you for no reason. Han family young master didn't care about Gu Fei's gloomy expression and spoke to the others as if he was talking to himself. The others were silent. Adding fuel to the fire wasn't something that everyone would do. Gu Fei didn't have any reaction. He calmly said to the others, "Let's keep going." They continued to hurry and chase after the screams in the fog. When they met other players, Gu Fei would still give them his friendly reminder. However, compared to before, there wasn't much sincerity. It was just a few cold words. Who would have thought that the number of people who believed him would multiply? Many players heard Gu Fei's warning and hurriedly left. Of course, there were still some who were doubtful. But at least they didn't meet another group of people like the first one. This made Gu Fei feel a lot better. Unscathed in battle suddenly realized the seriousness of Gu Fei's actions. Everyone is leaving. We're the only ones left in this area. Won't the boss's aggro be directed at us? Everyone looked at him. Unscathed in battle asked, "What, did I say something wrong?" "Yes. We're surprised that you only realized it now," Han family young master said. "I just didn't think too much about it at first." Unscathed in battle defended himself. Gu Fei suddenly said, "You guys should leave too." "What do you mean?" The few of them were startled. They had been walking together for so long, yet he suddenly told them to leave. It was really strange. "I didn't think too much about it at first, but Wushang's words reminded me." Gu Fei said, "Although this boss is more powerful when it goes berserk, the main thing is that it's too troublesome to attack an uncertain target. If there was no one around, wouldn't that mean that the target of its hatred had been confirmed? Under such circumstances, I think that if I join hands with Baishe, we can handle it." After Gu Fei said that, he glanced at Bai Shijing, who nodded and said, "There shouldn't be a problem." "So," Gu Fei said, "you guys should leave first." A few experts felt like crying. Although Gu Fei didn't say it explicitly, the meaning behind his words was clear: "You guys won't be of much help here. Instead, you'll mess up the boss aggro and affect our performance, so it's better if you leave." Even so, they had to admit that what Gu Fei said made sense. Although they had doubts about whether the two of them could challenge the boss that went berserk, they didn't need to hesitate at this time. It was worth a try if there was a possibility. The four of them didn't hesitate or delay any further. They nodded and said, "It's up to you guys." After that, the four of them suddenly walked in four different directions as if they had agreed on it. "What are you guys doing?" Gu Fei was surprised. Han family young master turned around and said, "You guys are already the heroes. Can't you at least arrange some minor roles for us?" Gu Fei was stunned. Sword Demon was the honest one. "We'll go in different directions and try to persuade the players around us to leave as soon as possible. You two just continue to walk toward the sound." Gu Fei's spirit was lifted. Usually, there were those who thought highly of themselves and looked down on all living beings. There were those who were dull and silent and looked very gloomy. There were those who were wretched and lustful. There were also those who often muttered some data that others couldn't understand. But at this critical moment, everyone's spirit was so harmonious and united. You guys. Gu Fei didn't know what to say. In the end, Han family young master held his forehead and said, "Hey, look at you. Do you think that we're going to sacrifice ourselves to save everyone like you? Brother, we just thought that if the four of us split up, there would be at least 3 of us who would have a higher chance of surviving. You're thinking too much about it." Gu Fei was speechless. The sword ghost smiled, turned around, and was the first to leave. Brother Yuan, unscathed in battle, also disappeared into the fog. Han family young master took out a bottle of wine and drank a mouthful. He looked very sad and indignant. "I'm extremely smart, but why can't I predict when I'll finish my wine? Even I can't understand myself." Then, he disappeared into the fog, and only the sound of a bottle breaking could be heard. Only Gu Fei and Bai Jingluan were left. The determination in their eyes never changed. "Listen carefully," Gu Fei said. Bai Jingluan nodded. The direction of the sound was still changing. The two only knew how to adjust their direction according to the change. They didn't know what giving up meant. They couldn't catch up with the boss's speed, so they could only try to get closer to the boss. That way, the boss would have a chance to find them. The 4 people's work seemed to be effective. In this leveling area that was supposed to be crowded with players, the two encountered fewer and fewer players. Apart from the 4 people's persuasion, the truth was even more convincing. More and more players had witnessed their companions or other players being killed by the boss that suddenly came out of the fog. Many people had already realized the danger they were in and were already retreating. Soon. The 2 of them had this premonition. The boss was still killing non-stop, but the 2 realized that it seemed to be circling around in a fixed small area. Obviously, because the other players had already retreated, the boss's aggro gradually fell on this corner where there were still players. And Gu Fei and Bai Jingluan were part of this corner. It was only a matter of time before they encountered each other. Fuck. Somewhere in the corner, the Han family young master was finally hit by the boss that appeared from the fog behind him. He tried his best to save him, but unfortunately, the sneak attack was too severe. The Han family young master soon saw that his HP had dropped to 0. He was sent flying and fell to the ground. He touched his pocket and cursed. "I can finally buy some alcohol," thought the Han family young master. He was waiting to appear at the resurrection point. Unexpectedly, when he landed, his HP was already 0, but there was no white light flashing. What's going on? The Han family young master wanted to move, but he realized that he could not. He could only lie on the ground. Fuck, I really became a corpse. The Han family young master did not expect such a scene. Speaking of which, he had never died in the game before. Did this happen to all players when they died? As the young master of the Han family thought to himself, his gaze shifted to the side. He saw a guy staring at him with his eyes tilted. "Brother Yu." The Han family young master opened his mouth and realized that he could still make a sound. "You died too?" asked Brother Yu. "What's going on?" asked the Han family young master. "Do I need to pretend to be a corpse on the ground for a while after I die? It can't be like that." "I don't know, but look over there." Brother Yu blinked. The Han family young master could not move his head, so he could only roll his eyes and try his best to look in that direction. There seemed to be someone lying on the ground motionlessly. What's going on? Everyone had the same question in their hearts. "Oh, fuck." An angry roar came from the fog. It was so close to Gu Fei and the Encyclopedia of Classics. "It's here." The 2 yelled and pounced over. They saw a figure pouncing towards them. The 2 immediately dodged to the side. When they were ready to attack, they realized that the incoming person was obviously not the boss. Not only was he a size bigger, his attire was also different. More importantly, he looked very familiar. Puff. The dust that this person stirred up when he landed was very familiar to Gu Fei. He waved the dust in front of his mouth and nose and called out, "Wu Shang." "It's me." The person in the dust said. "Where's the boss?" "Over there." Unscathed in battle said. "How are you?" "He died." "Why are you still talking after he died?" "Yeah, I'm also very confused." Unscathed in battle said. Gu Fei ignored him. In his mind, Unscathed in battle had long since become a frivolous person. Recover by yourself. After Gu Fei said this, he immediately rushed out with Encyclopedia of Classics. He could vaguely hear Unscathed in battle shouting, "Recover my ass. My HP is already 0. Motherfucker, why can't you revive me? Is it stuck?" Stuck. The players who came from online games all thought of this phrase that had been covered in dust for a long time. This phrase should not belong to an online game that was a holographic simulation, but apart from this, no one could think of any other explanation. At that moment, Gu Fei, an Encyclopedia of Classics, finally met the boss. "Looks like there's no one else around." Gu Fei let out a sigh of relief. "Yeah, let's get rid of it." Encyclopedia of Classics nodded. The Misty Assassin's footsteps paused, and its momentum did not decrease in the slightest. It had already slaughtered so many players, so it did not know what it meant to be lenient. Its charge was still like a gust of wind, and its target was Gu Fei. Chi Wave Shield. Encyclopedia of Classics flipped his palms, one above and one below, and pushed them out. Using the Chi Wave Shield did not require such a complicated technique. The posture that Encyclopedia of Classics placed his hands in was, "Dragon swallows clouds," from the dragon fist that he was proficient in. It was a powerful defensive move that dissolved the opponent's attack. At this moment, no one knew how useful it was against the boss. In front of his palms was the real defensive skill in the game, Chi Wave Shield. On the other hand, Gu Fei's left hand was condensing a lightning palm, and his right hand had already slashed out a dual flame flash. This was also the ultimate move of the Gu family's sword technique, Floating Clouds Hanging Sunday. It was a sword move, but this move was only the prelude. After the sword, the palm that followed was the ultimate move. The defense of Encyclopedia of Classics, coupled with the Chi Wave Shield, was definitely stronger than the shield of any heavy armored warrior in the game. Gu Fei's magic damage was undoubtedly the highest damage output in the game at the moment. The combination of the two could be said to be the strongest shield and the sharpest spear in the game. Chapter 449. The Sharpest Spear and the Strongest Shield. The Misty Assassin's dagger pierced the strongest shield, while its head was hit by the strongest spear. The Chi Wave Shield shattered upon contact with the Misty Assassin's attack, but it served as a hindrance, allowing 100 Lives Classic to neutralize the Misty Assassin's attack with ease. Theoretically speaking, the Dragon Swallows Clouds technique was very simple. However, no one knew how to neutralize it in practice. Although it was a game and the opponent was an NPC, the actions of both players and NPCs were based on the principles of physics. Although they would occasionally go against common sense, they were not unreasonable. Therefore, 100 Lives Classic could still neutralize the Misty Assassin's attack. This was something Gu Fei could not do because he did not have the strength to do so. It was just a vivid exaggeration, but in reality, it was a trick to turn strength into strength. Ordinary people would not know about it, but they could imagine it infinitely. In reality, when two forces collided, the gap between the two sides could not be too big, or else it would be useless. On the other hand, Gu Fei's strength was too weak. He could occasionally use it against players, but against a boss that was over level 60, Gu Fei knew his limits. In the end, the Misty Assassin did not react much to Gu Fei's attack. On the other hand, the 100 Lives strategist had exhausted all his strength to nullify the Misty Assassin's attack. In the end, he shook his arms and diverted the Misty Assassin's attack in another direction. This was considered a failure for 100 Lives Classic. The Dragon Swallow's Cloud skill did not change the enemy's strength, but instead completely devoured it and neutralized it. In the end, 100 Lives Classic could only change the direction of the Misty Assassin's attack. It was obvious that he was unable to digest it, so he could only settle for the next best thing. However, he wasn't discouraged. The Misty Shadow Assassin's attack was aimed at his side, and 100 Generations strategist immediately retaliated by grabbing his opponent's waist and using a body-hugging throw. The Misty Assassin leaped into the air and counterattacked 100 Lives Classic with a kick. This was the weakness of the computer compared to the human brain. It could only judge the pros and cons of a threat that had already occurred, but it could not predict a greater threat that was lurking nearby. He soared into the air and aimed a kick at 100 Era's Jingluan. 100 Era's Jingluan had experienced this before, so he was already prepared for it. He crossed his arms to block it. At this time, Gu Fei had already leapt into the air. When he brushed past the boss, Thunder Palm had already struck the boss. It was the second half of his floating cloud cover. 100 Lives Sage, who had witnessed everything, did not pay any attention to Misty Assassin's condition at all. He was only amazed by the brilliance of Gu Fei's move. He imagined that if he and Gu Fei were to spar, he would be able to dodge this move. Gu Fei, who had landed the Thunder Palm in midair, had pushed it back in the direction of the Misty Assassin. With this, the Misty Assassin had taken damage and was sent flying even faster. With a whoosh, the Misty Assassin had been sent flying into the fog without even needing to do anything. Hey! 100 Lives Sage waved his fist to express his excitement. Gu Fei did not care about it. His first reaction was to take out an apple and eat it. 100 Lives Sage had only used a Chi Wave shield from start to finish. He had relied on his own strength and skills to resist the boss's attacks. On the other hand, Gu Fei had used his dual flames and Thunder Palm in order to deal damage, which consumed a lot of MP. If he did not quickly replenish it, he would not be able to deal as much damage as he did when the boss came again. This was how the two cooperated. Although the Misty Assassin was in berserk mode, its attack patterns did not increase. It was only strengthened from its original methods. Gu Fei was already familiar with these patterns, so after 100 Lives Sage gave him a hint, he naturally understood the key to it. In this way, if he could resolve the first attack, he would naturally be able to resolve the second and third attacks. The boss's targets were only the two of them. When it attacked 100 Lives Sage, it was easier for him to resolve it. When it attacked Gu Fei, it was also prepared in advance, so everything went smoothly. Although he would receive some damage from the Misty Assassin's powerful impact every time he resolved an attack, he could also eat some food like bread while Gu Fei nibbled on fruits, so he was able to completely withstand the attacks. The two's confidence doubled. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before they defeated the Misty Assassin, unless this guy went berserk again and became even more abnormal. Did the boss have a second berserk mode? There was no need to discuss this for the time being. This was only the first berserk mode, but it had already caused a lot of trouble for the game's operations. Yi Xiaowu's cheating was indeed clever. After the Misty Assassin went berserk, any action that the system judged was completely in line with the rules, so it would not trigger any alarm. However, he neglected the fact that there were too many colleagues in the monitoring group who were watching the Misty Assassin's performance. At first, everyone was excited because of the Misty Assassin's berserk mode, but when they saw that it began to abandon its original target and start a massacre in the leveling area, everyone became dumbfounded. The Misty Assassin's actions were completely in accordance with its settings, so the system alarm would not treat this as an abnormal state. However, under the eyes of the staff, they felt that it was extremely bad if this continued. This kind of killing mode seemed to be endless. Boss Yi, this. At this time, someone had already raised a question to Yi Xiaowu, but he stopped himself. This was because this was not a programming error, but a major problem with the Misty Assassin's settings. At this time, Yi Xiaowu's face was already pale. Even his colleagues in the monitoring group had realized that there was a problem with the Misty Assassin settings, so how could he, as a planner, not realize that the Misty Assassin had become a disaster in this state? No one waited for Yi Xiaowu's reply, because dealing with an unexpected situation in the game was not something that Yi Xiaowu was responsible for. At this time, the members of the monitoring group who had been watching the Misty Assassin's killing had already dispersed. Some people had even asked Yi Xiaowu to leave his original seat, and they had already started the work that they were supposed to be responsible for. Yi Xiaowu heard that the leader of the monitoring group had already reported the current situation to the higher-ups. This time, it was not because the players were cheating, but because of a loophole in the game's design. This situation could be considered the same as when the Misty Assassin had wandered into the main city, so the monitoring group did not dare to deal with it carelessly. They immediately asked the higher-ups if this situation needed to be dealt with urgently. At the same time, Brother Yu's detailed complaint also attracted the attention of the GMs. Compared to the Han family young masters teasing, "The Misty Assassin is massacring the city," Brother Yu's complaint was already detailed to the point that even the GMs could not find an excuse to dodge it. According to Brother Yu's description of the situation, the GMs that he contacted immediately saw the tragedy in Xia Fog City. The Misty Assassin seemed to have completely lost control, and was slaughtering all the players. On the other hand, the authority of the GMs was only directed towards the players. They could mute players, stop players, and even delete their accounts. These were all within the scope of their authority, but when it came to the Misty Assassin, they absolutely did not have the authority to deal with the Misty Assassin. Therefore, the GMs immediately reported the situation to the higher-ups. Of course, there was only one higher-up, the person in charge of the game's operations, who had received many reports, quickly arrived at the monitoring group. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Yi Xiaowu. "Xiaowu, you're here too." He greeted Yi Xiaowu. He did not know that Yi Xiaowu was only here to watch the commotion and cause the incident. He thought that Yi Xiaowu had come to participate in the discussion because of this incident. After all, he was the main designer of the game. At this time, it was not yet time for the Misty Assassin to fight against Gu Fei and Hundred Era's classics. The higher-ups soon witnessed the Misty Assassin's endless slaughter. Similarly, he did not know much about the backstage settings, so he immediately asked Yi Xiaowu the reason for this situation. Yi Xiaowu answered in a daze. The leader of the monitoring group had already asked him this question before, and it was nothing more than a problem with the Misty Assassin settings. Yi Xiaowu answered truthfully. The current situation made him realize that the Misty Assassin's aggro system was clearly a major bug. In order to resist the player bug, Gu Fei, he triggered the Misty Assassin to go berserk, but in the end, he released an even bigger bug. Countless players lost their levels and died because of this. This was truly a disaster. After listening to Yi Xiaowu's explanation, the higher-ups did not say anything. Like the leader of the monitoring group, he immediately determined that there was a major problem with the Misty Assassin settings. However, because Yi Xiaowu, the main designer, was present, the two of them did not say much for the sake of their pride. However, at this time, the higher-ups had already given instructions for the monitoring group to immediately come forward to resolve this crisis. At the same time, they notified the staff in the backstage to sort out the players who had suffered from the Misty Assassin's assassin and restore their losses. This task was actually much more difficult than eliminating the Misty Assassin. To eliminate the Misty Assassin, the monitoring group could do it easily with the modifier. However, it was a very troublesome task to check the data. The staff in charge of monitoring the backstage data cursed as they followed the orders. At this time, the Misty Assassin had already killed more than half of the players. They thoroughly checked the data of the players who had died at the Misty Assassin's hands, while they hurriedly tracked the Misty Assassin's movements. They hurriedly locked onto the data of the targets it would attack next. This was also the reason why, although the Han family young master and the others had died, they did not resurrect according to the rules. It was because their data had been locked by the backstage. This was not a special treatment. It was just a way for the staff to reduce their workload. When the monitoring group was about to correct the Misty Assassin's actions, they suddenly stopped. This was because at this time, there were no other players around the Misty Assassin on the screen. The two players it was facing had already tangled with it for many rounds and seemed to have the ability to kill it. Everyone looked at the screen. The leader of the monitoring group looked at the higher-ups and pointed at the two players who were fighting the Misty Assassin. Let them continue. The higher-ups looked at the Misty Assassin's HP on the screen. It was already hanging by a thread. After thinking for a moment, they nodded. Continue. Chapter 450. Watching Gu Fei and 100 Era's Jingren toying with the Berserk Haze Assassin like it was nothing, the gamers in front of the screen were dumbfounded. Their coordination is amazing. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. One of them was the main attacker, while the other was the main defender. They cleverly took on half of the workload when facing the Haze Assassin. This way, the Haze Assassin's greatest advantage, speed, was not as scary as it used to be. The attacker didn't need to waste time defending, and the defender didn't need to prepare for an attack. Yi Xiaowu's face was pale. He could see that once the Haze Assassin went berserk, Gu Fei wouldn't be able to handle it. Unfortunately, he didn't see 100 Era's Jingren's skills. Only then did he realize that this Grandmaster of Combat seemed to be the same kind of person as the sorcerer. They both had skills that normal people didn't have. How could this be? Yi Xiaowu mumbled to himself. His colleagues saw his ugly expression, but they didn't know what was going on. They thought that he was feeling guilty because of the problem with the design. Someone even comforted him, Chairman Yi, don't worry. It'll be taken care of soon, but we'll have to trouble you to fix it. What else could Yi Xiaowu say? He could only bury his head and smile bitterly. Fix it? Will I have the chance to fix it? Yi Xiaowu already had an ominous premonition. Naturally, Gu Fei and 100 Era's Jingren didn't know how many pairs of eyes were watching them from behind. The two of them focused on dealing with the Haze Assassin's attacks, doing their best to counterattack with every wave. Finally, after the Haze Assassin was thrown into the air by 100 Era's Jingren, Gu Fei leaped over it. His sword slashed across the Haze Assassin's body like a stream of fire. Its entire body was set ablaze, and it rolled around in pain after falling to the ground. Gu Fei let out a long sigh. It's over. It's finally over. The two of them finally killed the boss. I wonder what it will drop. If it's an exquisite item, we can sell it for a lot of money, Gu Fei said to 100 Era's Jingren. Money. 100 Era's Jingren's eyes were sparkling. I didn't know it was so easy to earn money in the game. The Misty Assassin had already begun to drop items. While it was rolling on the ground, gold coins were already falling out. The learned strategist was so excited that he wanted to pick it up, but he was stopped by Gu Fei. Wait, it might be a trap. What trick? 100 Era's Classics was puzzled. Gu Fei remembered that he had been attacked by a boss before, so he didn't dare to be careless. It wasn't until the Misty Assassin was completely motionless, and the ground it rolled over was littered with items. Only then did I believe that the Misty Assassin was dead. Looks like he's really dead. Gu Fei said. 100 Era's Jingluan had already dashed forward to pick up the gold coins on the ground, as if they would disappear into the ground at any moment. Short-sighted. Gu Fei looked at him in disdain. Didn't I tell you that the truly valuable items are exquisite equipment? Gu Fei said as he walked over and picked up a dagger. He looked at it and said, fuck, it's a blank. No one said that bosses would definitely drop exquisite items. Sometimes, there would be some mediocre items. Gu Fei already had a dagger, so he didn't want to keep it anymore, so he threw it away. I can sell it to a merchant for some money. 100 Era's Jingren quickly went over and picked up the dagger that Gu Fei had thrown away. The merchant he was talking about was the various shop owners in the system. He could also sell items to them, but the system would buy them at a very low price. Look, this is the truly valuable item, Gu Fei said as he picked up the second item. Skill Scroll, Misty Ambush, Assassin's Skill. Suddenly appear and launch a powerful high-speed assault. How much can it be sold for? 100 eras, Jingluan asked. We'll talk about this later. Gu Fei didn't say that he didn't understand it either. Then, he picked up the third item. It was a small book. Gu Fei opened it and looked at it, Andrew Su's diary. Andrew Su. Is that his name? Gu Fei muttered and flipped through a few pages. It was a description of Andrew Su after he got lost in the fog. Gu Fei naturally wasn't in the mood to read it in detail. He put the diary into his pocket and picked up the remaining two items. Fuck. Fuck. Gu Fei said fuck twice before throwing them away. They were all blank. This meant that the boss only dropped a skill scroll and a strange diary. There was no exquisite equipment. 100 eras, Jingluan didn't care about this at all. He was already very happy to pick up the money. Andrew Su carefully picked up the gold coins that were dropped one by one and counted them as he picked them up. In the end, there were as many as 241 gold coins. Including the 200 gold coins worth of wine that the Han family young master gave him, it didn't take long for him to earn a total of 441 gold coins. This made 100 eras Jingluan extremely excited. Up until now, the most amount he had seen in the game was 200 gold coins. When he changed classes, a lot of people helped him collect the money. Naturally, the money was handed over very quickly. After that, his wallet never exceeded 3 digits. Let's see if there's any more. 100 eras, Jingluan muttered and went to look through the misty assassin's corpse. This was the fate of every boss. Even in death, they wouldn't let it go. On the other hand, Gu Fei was contacting the elite group. Where are they? What's wrong? What happened? The one who responded was actually Yutian Xinming. Oh, I just killed the boss. Where are you? Gu Fei replied. Killed? What did it drop? Yutian Xinming hurriedly asked. It's nothing. An assassin's skill scroll and a diary. I don't know what it is, Gu Fei said. Where are they? Yutian Xinming asked. I don't know. Why aren't you saying anything? Gu Fei called out twice, but the other 4 didn't respond at all. Gu Fei then sent a private message, but there was also no response. What the hell? Gu Fei was confused. On the other side, Yutian Xinming was also shouting, hurry, and pick me up at the revival point. Gu Fei was speechless. He couldn't imagine what kind of inhuman life he would have if he had randomly placed Yutian Xinming in Xia Fog City and he didn't have any friends. Let's go. Gu Fei called out to 100 eras Jingluan and the two of them walked back together. Just now, they met Unscathed in battle, who was sent flying by the Haze assassin, so Gu Fei was about to turn back to take a look. But when they returned, Unscathed in battle was still there. What was even more bizarre was that this guy was still in the position when Gu Fei left. Gu Fei was surprised and went forward. What the hell are you doing? Unscathed in battle was also depressed. I don't know. I can't move. My HP is 0, so why can't I revive? Why didn't you guys reply to my messages? Gu Fei said as he went up to help Unscathed in battle. You sent a message? Unscathed in battle was surprised. Both the private chat window and the mercenary channel were silent. Gu Fei was also very surprised because his hand couldn't touch Unscathed in battle. This was a setting that would only exist in the game's absolute safety zone. It was a restriction that only the system could make. Why would it happen here? What's going on? The two of them were confused. Compared to the two of them, Brother Yu and Han family young master came to a general conclusion. Perhaps the game company had realized that this boss was not right, so they had to take some measures. They didn't let us die. Instead, they sealed this place so that we could revive on the spot, right? Brother, you deduced. It's very likely. Han family young master agreed. The place where the two of them died was not like unscathed in battle, where they were alone. There were many other players acting as corpses around them. They couldn't move or send messages, so they could only actively participate in the discussion. Some of them were already fantasizing that they were not satisfied with being revived on the spot. They imagined that the game company would compensate them with an ultimate item that would replace Gu Fei as the main character of the book. The Misty Assassin was killed by Gu Fei and 100 Generations Jingluan under the watchful eyes of the game company. After that, there was a slight difference in opinion. One side believed that since the boss was killed by the players, it meant that the boss was not a threat that the players could not resist. Therefore, the previous losses should not be compensated. The other side continued to believe that there was a design error in the boss's berserk state and that it was a bug. Since it was discovered in time, it should be dealt with and the players who suffered losses should be compensated. Under such circumstances, there was no reason for the players to bear the losses due to the game's design error. The debate took up some time. Later on, someone reminded them that there were countless players who were still frozen on the ground like corpses. In the end, it was decided by the leaders and compensation was given. Meanwhile, the back-end data department had also given their feedback. Currently, there are no problems in restoring the data of the players who were locked down as corpses on the ground. As for the players who died and were not locked down in time, there are no problems in tracking them at the resurrection point. However, there are some players who died and left the resurrection point before any action was taken. It is difficult to track their specific information, and it is probably impossible to make up for it. C. A supporter of the first argument said, "There's no way to give full compensation now. If we restore the tracked players, then wouldn't it be unfair for the small number of players who haven't been tracked?" As a result, the leaders immediately rolled their eyes. If we don't compensate, everyone won't get fairness. If we compensate, at least some people will get fairness. Isn't it obvious what we should do? Therefore, the data restoration was immediately implemented. After the Misty Assassin went berserk, the corpses of the players who died suddenly showed physical recovery activities. Their HP was instantly restored. The players who died and dropped items found that the items that were wiped out by the system had returned to the ground and quickly picked them up. Everyone got up in a daze and continued to discuss. Sure enough. Brother Yu and Han family young master, who had expected it, looked at each other and smiled. The most surprised person was Yutian Shinming. He was squatting at the resurrection point when suddenly the scene flashed and he was thrown into a fog. He rubbed his eyes hard, but he still couldn't figure out what was going on. Butterfly Knot, Chapter 450. This time, it's really long. Chapter 451. Yutian Shinming's luck was pretty good. He was the first player to die after the Haze Assassin went berserk. After that, the Haze Assassin went on a killing spree. During this period of time, the staff of the monitoring group finally realized that something was wrong. They waited for the report and decided on how to deal with it. A group of players had already died at the hands of the Haze Assassin. These players, of course, would not stay at the resurrection point after they were revived. For the staff of the data group, it was very difficult to find these unknown players among such a large group of players. As for Yutian Shinming, because of his poor sense of direction, he did not dare to leave the resurrection point after he was revived. He was afraid that he would not be able to find his way out, so he stayed there and waited. In the end, he was rescued because of this. The staff of the data group could, of course, revive the players who had been locked down. However, they did not have many ways to deal with those who had died and were lost after reviving. One of the solutions was to lock down the resurrection point and follow the clues. Yutian Shinming, who did not leave the resurrection point, was easily found and revived on the spot. He was unaware that he was trapped in a thick fog and felt lonely and desolate. However, he soon discovered that his level had been restored. Even some of the skills that had dropped and the durability of his equipment were as good as new. Naturally, he was very surprised. Immediately after that, everyone in the mercenary channel began to discuss. During the process just now, Sword Demon, Han family young master, Brother Yu, and Unscathed in battle had tried to persuade the other players to retreat as soon as possible. As the number of players decreased, the risk of them becoming targets naturally increased. In the end, none of the four of them escaped. However, as it was already the later stage of the incident, they were all locked down. In the end, their resurrection was clean and neat, even faster than Yutian Shinming's. At this time, everyone in the channel was mainly discussing this retarded boss setting and the fact that the game company was so kind as to compensate the players. The players who were killed by the boss in Moonlit City did not give any compensation, did they? Unscathed in battle asked. No, omniscient brother Yu replied. That was then and this is now. How many levels did the players back then have? It's not a big deal for them to drop a little. They can't compare to us now, said Han family young master. The game company would not have decided on compensation based on the size of the loss. It was just that they were still in the early stages of the game's open beta. They did not have enough work experience, and the technical conditions were not perfect, so they did not implement compensation. Many of the technologies used today were developed and put to use after that incident. Therefore, it could only be said that the Han family young master and the others had come at a good time. Amidst the discussion, Yutian Shinming finally asked weakly, "Who's coming to pick me up?" "I'll be right back," Gu Fei replied. "No, I'm at coordinates XXX, XXX." Yutian Shinming said. Everyone was startled. This place was clearly not far from them, so it was definitely not within the city. "Are you not dead?" said everyone. "Just like you guys, I've been resurrected." Yutian Shinming had already figured out what was going on from the crowd's discussion. "Why are you resurrected too?" Unscathed in battle said. "Fuck, I wasn't killed by a berserk boss," cursed Yutian Shinming. "You've been dead for so long, your body should be cold." "That shouldn't be the case." Unscathed in battle said in disdain. The two then started arguing in the channel. In the end, the Han family young master, the group leader who had the authority to the channel, muted the two. The players who had been resurrected had already been dealt with. Everyone quickly saw the system's apology announcement. In addition, the remedy made the situation more passive. Since it was hard to find some of the players who had gone missing, the system notified these players to contact the online GM. Once they knew their names, it would be much easier for the data team to investigate their experiences. However, in order to prevent people from taking advantage of the situation, the system also seriously pointed out that those who deliberately caused trouble would be treated as disrupting the daily work of the game. Just an in-game announcement wasn't enough. The next day, on the main page of the game's official website, this news was also placed on the front page. The game officials generously admitted their mistake and appealed to the players who hadn't received compensation to contact them. They also cleared away the players' worries, telling them that this boss was already being investigated and would meet with everyone once it was fixed. The Haze assassin wasn't the only one being investigated. At the same time, the senior designer of the planning department, Comrade Yi Xiaowu, was also being investigated. He didn't expect things to turn out this way, and he also didn't expect the Haze assassin's aggro system to be so fatally retarded. Otherwise, he would have fixed it long ago. Why would he wait until today? Even a wise man would make a mistake. Today, Yi Xiaowu had verified this saying. He originally wanted to design a boss that would be difficult for the players to deal with, but now he, the designer, seemed like an idiot. Even worse, the fact that he had used the game modifier to change the game's settings was quickly revealed. A thorough investigation of the boss going berserk would, of course, involve the conditions for the boss to go berserk. Under normal circumstances, Yi Xiaowu's private actions would likely be overlooked, but the situation was different. A bunch of people in the monitoring group had watched the boss go berserk, and in the end, the conditions for the boss to go berserk didn't match at all. Was it a programming error or something? Thus, after further investigation, they quickly discovered the records of the modifier being tampered with. Next, Yi Xiaowu didn't wait for the investigation to end up on him. He simply stood up and admitted it. Why? Everyone looked at him in surprise. One had to know that Yi Xiaowu was a guy who often said that he was a self-disciplined game worker. No one would have thought that the first person to violate the rules would be him. Yi Xiaowu's expression was calm. I just don't want the influence of the bug in the game to spread. Spread the bug? Everyone was confused. Are you doing this to verify the bug on the Haze Assassin? The bug I'm talking about isn't the Haze Assassin. Yi Xiaowu pointed at the screen of a computer, which was replaying the Haze Assassin's atrocity. It was the scene where the boss was killed by Gu Fei and 100 Realms Jingluan. I'm talking about them. Them? Everyone looked over. Can't you guys see? They're all people who are more skilled than ordinary people in terms of fighting skills. Their existence is a huge disruption to the game's balance. 2 level 40 players working together actually killed a level 60 boss that went berserk. Have you guys seen such a thing in any online game? Yi Xiaowu said. Everyone was silent. Yi Xiaowu's words didn't sound unreasonable to them. The skills of these 2 people were a bit exaggerated. You guys saw the thing that just dropped. Hidden Fog Ambush, an assassin skill that's level 60 and above. If it's mastered by players now, what's the point of continuing the game? Yi Xiaowu continued. Everyone continued to be silent. There's a problem with the Haze Assassin's aggro setting, which led to terrible consequences. This is my responsibility and the negligence of our designer. However, I insist that we must think of a way to stop the existence of these bug players. Even if we can't forcefully ban them from the game, we can't let them do whatever they want in the game. Other players need a fair environment. Yi Xiaowu said. There was still silence, but the monitoring group leader patted Yi Xiaowu's shoulder and said, "The boss is calling you." The boss here was also the biggest boss in the parallel world. Although Yi Xiaowu didn't have any real power, he was a high-level designer with a very high position. Now that he had a problem, no one present had the right to do anything to him, so they quickly reported the situation to the higher-ups. Not long after, the boss sent a message to Yi Xiaowu. Yi Xiaowu stubbornly insisted on his own opinion. He wasn't the slightest bit afraid and calmly walked out of the monitoring group to find the boss, leaving behind a wave of whispers behind him. Yi Xiaowu was the absolute core of the parallel world design. It could be said that without him, there wouldn't be a parallel world. He was a meritorious person who had worked hard and contributed to the company. Although he had committed a serious crime that was strictly forbidden by the company, everyone thought that this matter would be brushed off with a laugh. In addition, Yi Xiaowu's behavior wasn't for personal gain. What he said just now had already won the approval of many people, and everyone felt that there was no need to harshly pursue this matter. In the boss's office. Behind the wide office desk, the boss had his hands behind his back and was waiting for Yi Xiaowu's arrival. When he heard the knock on the door, he said, "Come in," and turned back to sit in his chair. The boss's expression was gloomy, but Yi Xiaowu still had a stubborn expression. He had long had the idea that Gu Fei was a bug that had to be suppressed or eliminated, but he had always endured it. Today's incident could be said to be a fuse. From the moment he used the modifier, his heart had involuntarily embarked on a path of failure or death. He had already vowed to erase this bug to the end. "It seems that I don't need to ask the reason," the boss said. Yi Xiaowu nodded. "You know, this kind of person, I know." The boss directly interrupted Yi Xiaowu's words. "This kind of person's existence is a kind of imbalance. I already knew it when you first told me, and I also said that there should be a way, but it definitely isn't the method you're using now." The boss's tone was unexpectedly strict, and Yi Xiaowu was a little surprised. He had also discussed with the boss about this kind of bug player, and he knew that the boss also had concerns about them. However, he didn't expect that when he violated the rules to suppress this kind of player, the boss would be so angry that he didn't treat this kind of player differently. But, no buts. Yi Xiaowu's words were mercilessly interrupted again. The boss's settings are unreasonable. I can understand and forgive this kind of work mistake, but I absolutely won't allow you to use the modifier this time. Do I let them continue? Yi Xiaowu was still unyielding. Even if they continue, it will definitely be better than what you're doing now, the boss said. This kind of imbalance caused by the people themselves is a long-standing problem. If you use this method to deal with people with outstanding skills, then what about those players with money? Don't tell me you don't know the power of money in the game. Then aren't people like them a kind of imbalance? Yi Xiaowu was suddenly confused. He really hadn't thought about whether the players with money were imbalanced. We can use the method of perfecting the settings to close the gap between these players and ordinary people, but we absolutely have no right to create special rules for them. The game world also needs a unified standard. Go home and think about this carefully before coming back to see me, the boss said. Yi Xiaowu turned around in a daze, and he heard the boss say one last sentence behind him. You created this world, but this world has never belonged to you. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.